Testing for YouTube. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Okay, welcome everyone. We will call to order our Committee of the Whole meeting. And before we start tonight, we will recognize that we're holding our meeting on the unceded traditional territories of the Sishat and Hoopachesit First Nations. We do have an agenda in front of us. Are there any late items to add from councillors? Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, I would like to add information talk about Mosaic and the cutting that they did near the graveyard, if we don't mind, somewhere along the line.
Thank you. We'll add that under item H, new business, so H6. Any other items of new business? Seeing none, any late items from our corporate officer?
No late items, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Then would somebody like to move approval of our agenda with the addition of the late item? Moved by Councillor Patola, seconded by Councillor Dame. Seeing no other comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And we have minutes from the meeting held at 6 p.m. on February 5th, 2024 as presented. Move to adopt by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Dame. Any comments on the minutes? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. We'll move to public input period. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the committee. A maximum of 6 speakers for up to 5 minutes each can be accommodated. For those participating electronically, we ask that you use the raise your hand feature and you'll be called on to speak in the order which your hand appears. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak at public input today? Okay, Mr. Kannegizer can come forward first and then we'll go to the gentleman at the back.
Here we are. I was somewhat surprised to read in the opening remarks to the 5-year financial plan that it was difficult this year for the tax increases because there's a considerable amount of built-in costs relating to employment and remuneration for employees. And much of that could not be controlled, presumably because it's due to contract negotiations and management contracts. And while I admit that the wage rates, salary rates, can be challenging to negotiate, they're not impossible. But the other side of that equation is totally the responsibility of council, that being the number of employees that the city hires. So I very pleased to read question 17 of the financial plan that was presented for this agenda, and it asked for a document detailing the number of employees as compared to previous time periods. It'll be very useful to council as they make this 5-year plan effective. To put payroll costs into perspective, just to remind ourselves, employee remuneration represents 47% of the total operating expenditures of a city before amortization. Then I looked at the 2022 SOFI report. Shows 90 employees with remuneration in excess of $75,000. Of which 55% of the total remuneration is listed. We do not know how many employees who earn less than $75,000, but that total was $6.7 million. So wages and salaries and benefits are indeed a large factors of the financial part of the city. And I'll just throw out a couple of other suggestions that maybe you add to that report. Some supplementary information might be useful to add perspective to those employment costs. Maybe we get the number of employees at the final December 2023 payroll. How many checks were issued, how many deposits were made, that kind of thing. And another one would be how many T4s were issued to employees at the end of December. We don't need names, nothing, we just need numbers to kind of put it into perspective of the employee costs. So I'll just conclude by saying I trust council is looking forward to receiving the number of employees information. And then I read question 50 of the financial plan. And it asked for details of the key-to-key costing to date and remaining costing that's been allocated. I was here over a year ago asking for the plans of the key-to-key pathway to connect Tyee Landing at the Somas lands to Roger Street. I was told then that there were no current plans to build that section of the trail. Well, obviously, council has changed those plans. Thanks to Mike Fox and Jim McDonald, the full key-to-key map plans are now available on letsconnectpa.ca. But I find it interesting that I have not found it on the official city website, where I would expect it to be available for citizens. The map clearly shows the pathway from the Somas site gates, Dunbar Street, along Dry Creek, through the Railroad Y, across the train trestle over Dry Creek, up to the intersection of Redford and Stamp, along Stamp to the railway crossing, and finally along the railroad to Roger Street. That will be the full key-to-key path, originally envisioned as a waterfront walkway, but now we see far from the waterfront, except at Victoria Quay, Tyee Landing, the Somas lands, and Harbor Quay. The documents in that letsconnectpa.ca include details of a total funding of the pathway, which the question asked at question 50, $7.1 million. There's grant funding totaled to $3 million, including a direct grant of $2.5 million plus funds from the Carbon Reserve and Canada Buildings Fund. $2.8 million from various reserve funds, where the origin of those reserves are most likely from property taxes. So to say that the only contribution is $1,253,411 to come from property taxes is a bit of a stretch, because you're also spending $2.8 million from reserve funds, which I presume came as operating expense, operating fund reserves, which come from taxation.
Mr. Kanagizer, you are out of time, so if you want to just wrap up, but we'll give you a few more seconds.
So if council really wishes to reduce the 2024 tax burden, here's an ideal place to save $1.2 million. A question then, will council stop this key-to-key connection from Roger Street to the Soman lands? Either reduce the property taxes or allocate those funds to more worthwhile and needed infrastructure improvements. Dare I mention, you could put aside funds for the future regional district pool. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kanagizer. Next, we have the gentleman in the back. Thanks. And for people in the audience, we actually don't allow clapping because clapping leads to people booing if they don't like what someone has to say. So if you could just try as much as possible to remain neutral so that everyone who might want to come up and speak today can feel comfortable doing so. Thanks. And if you want to just introduce yourself before you start, that'd be great.
I'm Gerald Brownridge. I'm a resident. I go to the pool pre-COVID, and it ran a lot better than after COVID. I think it's been mismanaged, and a lot of money has been wasted on these new pool ideas. And I think what needs to be done is properly manage the pool now. It should be open on Sundays for the children. I don't care about the adults. I'm mainly only concerned with the children learning how to swim and having something to do besides doing drugs. Right? So I think we should, if you're going to do anything, do a little maintenance and upgrade on the pool. And then when the size of this town increases by 50%, then you can talk new pool. Okay, another thing is, I think that we should do more work on tarring the cracks in the road before the water gets down and undermines the road bed. I notice a lot of that going down the hump towards Nanaimo. They waited until the road started to slouch before they tried to fix it. And I think it's a lot easier to preempt the problems before they get down to the roadbed underneath. And that's that for this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. I think the next hand we had up was Charlene. Coming forward.
How did you know that? What the heck? I didn't put it up. Hi. Hi, everybody. Well, thank you for your rebuttal on the GIS query that I had last time. And I was just perusing the information that you gave me. And you're actually, what the GIS coordination, which is the oh, I forgot my glasses. Darn, I do that all the time. The Geographic Information System. And what you're actually doing, even though it's a $150,000 grant from the provincial government for this year, is you're adding 2 more employees to the already abundant employees that the city council has. So my query is, after 2024 and 2025, are we going to have to continue paying for these salaries? Will the provincial grants still be ongoing afterwards? And next idea was, why is the key-to-key project so important to follow through at this time when the taxpayers are having so much difficulty already keeping up with the everyday pressures of inflation, loss of income, and the ever-increasing medical crisis after the COVID injections, especially amongst seniors who are also on a fixed budget? The 2030 UN agenda is that we will own nothing and be happy, but homeless, it seems, if council keeps the inflationary trend as it is presently doing. Yes, so I'm kind of opposed to all the money that's going to the key to Quay project. I never know what to say, if it's key or quay, my French comes in there. Okay, anyways, if I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any for me.
Thank you, Charlene. No
Okay.
questions.
No questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Other members of the public who would like to provide comments today? Okay, come on forward and then I'll go to you next.
Says red now. Okay. Red is good. In furtherance to the first person that was speaking, if the Key-to-Key project were not to go forward, that's $2.8 million of reserve money that could pay for some of the things that I found in the financial plan, where there is no reserve for equipment. And I deal with a lot of the public. I have yet to meet anyone who supports the Key-to-Key walk. It is a white elephant of the worst type. Also, it was never voted in by the taxpayers. It's a creation of the council. And in this case, I think the council needs to step back and take another look at it. The other part of this is that coming out with a 17% increase, well, it's better than Osoyoos. They're looking at 39%. But what I see happening is what happens usually. You'll come back and you'll say, 10%, didn't we do wonderful? And I've watched it for many years. I would like to see the Key-to-Key project killed for now. Perhaps it can happen in the future, but right now, with inflation, with the fact that I'm also a senior, the project itself, I think is a piece of ego. Last year, without the 17% increase, I paid 30% more in taxes. That's twice in 10 years that I've been at 30% or better. With this one, it could be happening again. That's unsustainable. I don't care how much we want things. Perhaps it's time to look what we can afford. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on forward.
That's it? Okay, thank you. My name is Castle. I'm here about the key to key also. I'm in agreement with the other two gentlemen. It's something that we don't need right now. We have young people dealing with mortgages, bank interest rates going up. There's sports for their children. We have groceries to put on the table. We have seniors here, on and on. The expenses on a personal level are really high. And we have never had a referendum in this town in a long time. Instead of having a democracy, we vote you in to serve us. We don't vote you in to rule us. And right now, that's what we're dealing with. We need a referendum on this key to key. We also need a referendum on your raising the taxes again. And also, I've been doing a lot of research on different communities with wages that are given to council and given to the mayor. And we have to take a look at our population. We aren't a big city. I can see them staying where they are, but I can't see them going higher at this moment in time. We have to look at the people in the communities and the young families and the seniors and make it livable here, and we're not doing it. And I think that SOMAS property, that also has to be looked at. I think we need referendums in this city and that we need to have a say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who would like to provide input today? Do we have someone online? Okay. Looks like Tina online. Tina, if you can unmute yourself. Tina, we've unmuted on our end.
I've got it, sorry.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
I've got it, yeah. Well, first of all, I think that it cost me a lot of money when the road was blocked, not being able to go out of town. So I think that would be like a little more important than a walkway. Also, in regards to the gentleman's comment about drugs, we could use a really good state-of-the-art treatment center, trauma center for those addicts that are growing by the numbers and dying by the day. So key to key, I'm not too sure. Swimming pool, I like the idea, but I think there are way more pressing issues, and I'm just new to listening into this. I don't really know a whole lot about city council or politics or anything really, but that's just my take on it. And I think I've got a valid point. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Okay, we'll move on to delegations. We have one delegation today. Sorry, I think we're at 6. We do have another opportunity for input. I think it was 6. 4.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah, it was 6 speakers, so that's what we allow for public input at the beginning of the meetings. However, we will have another opportunity for input at the end of the meeting. We will go to our first delegation, sorry, our only delegation today, and that is Union Locals 592 and 686.
Good evening. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak to you today. I am Steve Smith, President of Unifor Local 592. We are here representing both Unifor locals at the Catalyst Mill, locals 592 and 686. We are seeking Port Alberni City Council support in securing fiber for our Catalyst Mill here in the valley. We do not want to end up like one of our sister mills that are shut down in this province: Gold River, Port Alice, Elk Falls, Paul River, Mackenzie, half of the Crofton Mill. Currently here in Port Alberni, number 4 paper machine is down for 10 days, and part of that is for lack of fiber. The companies in BC and here locally are willing to invest if they are guaranteed fiber. That investment would help sustain the good jobs in this community for years to come. Forestry and pulp and paper is a sustainable industry, and we need the council support in lobbying the government for fiber here in the valley. With the APD and Solmas going down, it's hurt our mill. We relied on fall-down chips from the APD and wood waste from both mills to feed our steam plant to help us stay off the more expensive natural gas. Has there been any talks to start up another sawmill in this valley? We met earlier today with the Tashat to discuss different opportunities going forward. We want to maintain good relationships with all groups in the area. Next month, we are holding a forestry summit with Unifor, the steel workers, and PPWC to lobby the government in Victoria for our industry. We need to act now to change the current trend. We are here tonight to ask for council support. We all know the direct and indirect value that Catalyst paper has on the local economy. Some of them including, but not limited to, many trucking companies, including Haggard's, Barry's Trucking, Napa Auto Parts, Granny's Chicken, Dimitri's Pizza, Colines Nursery, Walco, Canadian Tire, Acklands and Fastenal, Workwear World, LB Woodchoppers, tugboat companies, supermarkets and restaurants, and of course Van Isle Ford and the car dealerships here, to name a few. In 2008, when Catalyst Paper experienced a layoff, it impacted all recreational activities within the city and the schools. Classrooms were closed down and teachers lost their jobs. Families had to leave town. We are here seeking your support in keeping Catalyst Paper a part of a healthy economy here in the Alberni Valley. Thank you for your time. Our group is now willing to answer any questions or concerns you might have.
Thank you for coming. I'll start by saying that you have our strong support, and there's been significant ongoing lobbying activities from this council and past councils as well, specifically around the issue of fiber. I had a meeting last week with the Minister of State, Andrew Mercier, who was just appointed specifically to work on the fiber supply issue, as you probably are aware. It was a fantastic meeting. Myself, Chief Brandy Lauder, Chief Ken Watts, and the chair of the regional district were there for that meeting. And we're working on a follow-up one as well. I also met today with the mayor of North Cowichan, who of course is in the position we don't want to be in,
Yes.
with the Crofton Mill partially closed and obviously a lot more concern. And myself and Mayor Rob Duncan were talking about how we can work together to lobby, and we gave our staff a few meetings that we'd like requested as soon as possible. So I just do want you to know that you do have our strong support. And my question to you is, how can we do more other than working with other local governments, but how can we do more to support the fiber issue? And then council will probably have more questions as well.
Well, we appreciate your efforts so far, but it's going to be an ongoing process going forward. When we lobby the government, I think during that lobby that we have coming out, we're going to be coming out of it and asking for support, maybe put pen to paper that we both go together, lobby the government, lobby the coalition, whoever we need to discuss this and keep the pressure going so nobody kind of lets it fade away. I don't know if you guys have anything more to add on that. I know Ted's part of the Unifor Forestry Council, and that's Canadian-wide, and we bring it up at all levels of Unifor. Any more questions from you people?
Thanks. I'm a part of the province's Council for Sustainable Forest Industry. And today we were in a meeting working on the draft recommendations of our report that are coming forward, and there has been a lot of conversation on that council about fiber supply and the need to make sure we have a full-looking industry. So yeah, I just want you to know that those conversations are going on there at a greater level as well. Councillor Haggard and then Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for coming today. The future of Catalyst is one of the things that keeps me awake at night because I'm worried about the future for the 300 direct jobs, but also the 600 indirect jobs that they play a big part of in our community. So you mentioned a summit coming next month. Would it be open to council members to attend as well? I just feel like the more knowledge we have, the better able we are to advocate on your behalf.
We kind of thought about that today, and we were going to reach out to our leaders and ask if that could be possible. That's something we could.
Yeah, we can definitely look into that. We'll talk to the guys who are more directly organizing the event, and once we hear back from them, we can let you know.
Because I think we would be very supportive. Thank you.
Yeah, this isn't the first lobby we've had. I know me and my brother Corey Bouvier here from 686, we've lobbied the government a few times. We've had results in other aspects of lobbying, and this is going to be directly for fiber for our industries.
Great, thank you. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming tonight. Really appreciate it. Would it be against, would it be okay if I make a motion to recommend to council to write a letter of support, Madam Mayor? Is that something we can do right now?
Absolutely, and I would say that we have already written to the province on the fiber supply issue specifically regarding Catalyst, but it doesn't hurt to write another letter. And in my meeting with Rob Duncan today, he shared a letter that he wrote that has 5 specific recommendations, 3 of them around fiber supply, but I think all of them are forward-looking at strengthening the whole industry. So I would suggest that we mirror that so that we can kind of be sending the same message to the province.
I know you asked what we could do. Is it possible to be part of that loop? So we know the questions, the answers, and maybe put some input from us, because Unifor is a pretty strong union and we do have some pretty good leadership that can direct us in the right areas.
Absolutely, and that letter was worked on with the union just in Crofton. Thanks. Go ahead.
Then I'll make the motion, Madam Mayor, that a committee of the whole recommend to council to write a letter of support for continued fiber supply for Catalyst Mill.
Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Councillor Patola. Other comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And other comments or questions from council? Councillor Douglas.
Thanks for coming here. I'm just wondering, where's management on this? Are you working hand in hand with? I know it's sometimes difficult to discuss in public, but are you
both locals
sort of a successful partnership working together towards this goal?
We spoke with the Deschat earlier today. We immediately got a hold of management, upper management in the mill. We have a meeting on Monday to discuss results going forward with them. We can also discuss that we met here. I think that Walter Tarnowski's reached out to the council in the past. I don't know if he, a lot of things we don't share, but on this one, we're both working together to try and keep the mill running. Nobody wants to see it, one of the ones I found on the list.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I just, we've got a history of working together to get this operation through difficult times in the past. So I think everybody on council here, as the mayor said, we're going to work in that same direction and help you in whatever way we can. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, I know in the past, unions have banged their fists kind of not working with the company, but we've been brought up to work with the company. That's a better working relationship going forward and makes more successful for our whole operation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, just one more comment. I just want to make sure that you're aware our Economic Development Manager, Pat Deacon, stays in very close contact with Walter, your mill manager, and they communicate on a regular basis on what can we do, how you're doing, and if anything ever comes across his desk, or if he sees anything, any kind of grant funding or possibilities of funding that they can access, he makes sure that they're aware of it as well. So we do work closely together.
Thank you.
Okay.
We appreciate all the work that you guys do on our behalf. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Anything else?
Okay.
Thank you.
No other questions. Thanks for coming. Okay. Move on to unfinished business, and we've got the 5-year financial plan Q&A summary. And I'll go to our Director of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, as we usually do, we update the Q&A as much as we can before each meeting and populate each of the the questions where possible. There's some that might need follow-up, but they are there for the committee's consideration tonight.
Thank you. Questions or comments from council? We've also got a additional budget discussion still on the rest of the agenda, but are there any questions on this piece? No? Okay. Then we'll move on to staff reports. Sorry, no staff reports. One letter of correspondence. We've got Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions follow-up from our UBCM meeting and information on detox services, which we've been continually advocating for with the provincial government. Any comments on the correspondence? Seeing none, we'll move on to new business. Item number 1, 2024 to 2028 financial plan. Back to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the report in the agenda tonight has a listing of everything that we reviewed at our committee of the whole when we had the financial plan overview. With that, there's the additional request to have the capital split out, which we've done now in the financial plan. So we've tweaked that a little bit. So there's that display on the 2024 facilities financial plan for the capital expenditures. So that $600,000 was split out, and within the report there's also the description of the projects that are larger in scope that we have in there, one including the boiler, and then some of the renovations that are proposed at City Hall, and then the equipment to reserve fund that we are seeing increased inflation on the equipment that we had identified for purchase. So that's there. And within the capital plan, we haven't really focused on that. So tonight, I'm hoping that the committee will review what's in the capital plan, because once the financial plan is adopted, then staff will be delegated that authority to move forward with this capital. So if there's any information or any further discussion that we need to have with capital, it's probably a good time to ask those questions. And if we can't provide the answers tonight, then we can have some follow-up. And then of course we can always bring back additional information if there's additional questions. But when we look at the financial plan, we see the Connect the Keys and the master planning coming from the Growing Communities Fund. So that's no longer in taxation. The 1.25 is coming from the Growing Communities Fund, and then master planning, which is underway. We have a report in this agenda that will address the master planning work that'll be undertaken, and this is funding that's coming for the General Reserve Fund. When we look at the capital expenditures for water and sewer, those master plans are coming from those utility funds. That will leave us approximately $3 million in the Growing Communities Fund to use and to support some of the master plan outcomes that we are looking at. So whatever higher risk items that we have in the master planning work, we can bring those forward and utilize that Growing Communities Fund for the growth in the community. We've paused as a recommendation, we've paused the tree planting in 2024 and using the allocation from 2023. With fire, we see the fueling station that needs to be replaced, and that wasn't in the financial plan previously, but we do need to replace that fueling station at the fire hall. The cost of the exhaust system, which is in the IRF, sees a little bit more of a cost escalation. So there's a $5,000 funding contribution from the taxation this year. And then we've seen various increases, and within the report, we've seen the different IRF escalation for the equipment that we need to fund through taxation. Wherever possible, we do push back our equipment or look for alternatives, but we are requiring that additional funding to support the purchases that have been identified in 2024. Also, we do have 3 vehicles that have been identified for the local government carbon action plan. So that's a fund that we utilize to electrify our fleet or do building upgrades or anything to reduce the carbon impact. And with that, those funds are funded for approximately $150,000 per year from the local government climate action fund, and we put our contribution in around $50,000. So we are contributing about 200,000. We also have the climate action role that's in the financial plan, and that's a resource in planning. So in order to have our climate action plan, which is required by the province, we are supporting with that position and using the grant funds to do that. So we've seen other local governments suggest doing that to get the plan started and utilizing those funds. So that is an eligible expense for that. So it's not a tax impact, but we'll be utilizing those funding sources from the local government carbon action fund. We've looked at reducing the level of service as far as the mower. We looked at the Toro, and that was well over $100,000 more than we had in the plan. So we've looked at an alternative that is much closer to what we had in the IRF, but it's not the same type of unit that we normally would have in there, but it still would meet the functionality for the city. We've included intersection safety once again. CSOs, our commitment to CSOs are in there, and that's coming from taxation. We have a project on 3rd Avenue that we're undertaking. We do see further funding for field upgrades and renewal, and that's 157. When we look at the annual Maclean's Mill budget, we normally contribute 30,000 per year with matching funds coming from the ACRD, and we also apply for a grant every year, and sometimes we get that, sometimes we don't. In recent years we haven't, but that is in the plan until we hear otherwise, and then we would remove that as funding source if it's not in the financial plan. And as mentioned, the facilities are all listed out separately. If the committee has any questions on that, we can discuss further, but I think the larger ones are in the staff report. And then moving to future years, we did split out the facilities within 2026, noting that there's a Maclean's Mill contribution of 25,000 in there and 30,000 in its normal place. I will review with the manager of facilities to make sure that we aren't double looking that, but we are trying to expand the detail on the facilities to provide that detail for council. So with that, I think we do obviously have another opportunity on March 4th at 6 p.m. for additional public input. We always have public input opportunities through our council at portalberni.ca. But tonight, if there's any questions from the committee that we can take, we can try to get the answers tonight, but also include in the question and answer if needed.
Thank you very much for the overview. Are there questions from council? Councillor Solta.
So first of all, I want to thank the finance for answering my 20 questions I sent them and the ones over the weekend. So I do appreciate that time. I do have a couple. One is to do with on page 19, development services. Vacant planner role has decreased in budget for 0.7, it's on page 19, 0.74% with a tax decrease of 205,825. And we need, and looking further along, I noticed that we need to hire a long range planner at 0.48%, 133,676. Just kind of curious. I understand that we need planners, and I know we have a shortage of them, and it's because there's so much construction happening and we're backlogged. So I'm just kind of curious to know what a long range planner is and why take it off the budget if we were needed to hire a planner. So just understanding the logistics there.
One question at a time.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through to Councillor Solda. So yeah, with the decrease with the planning services budget, what we looked at when we're trying to bring this budget forward to council and the committee was to make sure that it would reflect what we'd actually incur. So we anticipate that would be going down this year because of the timing of hiring that person in that role. With the items that we have included in the financial plan cover page report, those are items that we might have talked about or we've heard council and the committee talk about in the past. So we tried to bring approximate dollars, approximate numbers forward, but those weren't in the financial plan populated, but those are requests from staff to meet the needs of our strategic priorities or just the increase in demand and the services that we see or continued levels of service. So even though some might be increased levels of service, I think there's some other impacts too as far as regulatory requirements that we might need additional positions for. But we can talk about each position, but the long range planner is not a current level of service, it would be an increase in service.
The other question, and I think we've had this little discussion in your office today about economic development. I noticed that there was a decrease in the same page of 36,473 at 0.13%. And I have a little issue on that because there's so many businesses out there that need some help, and because of either they need their building fixed up or gates to help people stop sleeping in the in their entrances and stuff like that. So why is it down or is it up? Maybe you could. I mean, is the budget the same? But here it says it's down. It's being decreased.
So, Madam Chair, with the financial plan this year, obviously we looked at the number that we were bringing forward, and each manager was tasked with trying to understand if they could reduce the budget and try to find a way to bring that tax increase down. So the economic development manager was tasked with that also, and found a few items. When we look at some of the work that we had planned in the past, such as the facade improvement program, there's some work that staff need to do to undertake to restart that program. So I think that we can provide more information to council, but at this time we're looking at that as far as changes moving forward. It might be a slight reduction, but there has been some changes also to that department with just assignment of staff. So if you look back a couple years, we are budgeting much closer to actually incurring costs. So if we do see something that is lower, that could be a factor too. I don't know off the top of my head with economic development, but this is the budget that the manager brought forward and felt could move forward for 2024.
Okay, so the other thing is, I was going to make a motion tonight about separating and having a separate reserve on major crime reserve, and since I've been very vocal about that, I'm going to wait a year because there's some new things coming out, and I just wanted our council to know that. I'm glad 2025 we see community policing coming out of the reserve we have now and on its own. That's correct? Am I in the right?
Madam Chair, that is correct. So that was the council direction, and the financial plan reflects that. So you'll see 2024 in the revenue side of the financial plan, the funding coming for community policing, but moving forward in 2025, that's a zero value.
So, Madam Mayor, also on line 35, page 20, class 4, I'm just kind of curious to know, when does it go back up? Because it's been at the same, I don't have that percentage written down here, so I would have to go there. Page 20 might be different on here now. So the taxes for class 4 is at, I think, 16, I'm just on the top of my head.
Madam Chair, so to Councillor Solda, with the major industry, so every year we do bring forward the tax rate bylaw, and it has the share of each taxation for each class. And it's up to council to make the decision to maintain that, adjust it, depending on the values that we see in that. Obviously, staff make the recommendation moving forward, and the recommendation in the past few years is to keep it steady at around 18%. But we've seen increases in light industry, which have improved the tax roll in that part of the overall tax roll of the city. So, we will bring forward a staff report that has the recommendation for the tax share, and usually we start at that same classification or same allocation from the prior year.
And the only reason I'm suggesting it might go up couple of percentages is to take it off the taxes off the homeowners, because that's gone up quite high. So it would balance it a little bit more. So that's just a suggestion. Also the vacant building on page 40 and line 15190, it seems to be like $1,000 across the board there for the whole few years. And I know we haven't been utilizing it, but we need to start working on our vacant buildings that we have, and either we charge them or do something, because we have a lot of vacant buildings. They're not being looked after. A lot of them are absentee land owners. And at $1,000 across the board, I would like to see it, be brought forward to council and take a look at it. We've talked about it a lot, and it's just getting really frustrating. So I don't know if you have a comment on that.
Madam Chair, so in my time here, I think there's been one self-reported vacant building. So we've received $1,000 in the last 4 years in that line item, but beyond that, that's all I have.
So, Madam Mayor, I don't know if that would be a great recommendation for us to take a look at. I know we've had shortages of staff, and a lot of staff work has been done on the side of the desk, so it's something on there. The other one is road maintenance. I'm really happy to see an increase in the road maintenance. I just want to say thank you, and that will include all the line painting. We've heard a lot from the public about line painting cracks and different things, so I'm assuming that's going to be all in that road maintenance as we go along. Great. Okay, so then the other one is page 45, 26720, Harbor Key. Regarding, I notice a 1% increase in the budget, and my problem is there's, we've talked about it in the past too, and I'm talking about just recently in the past, not 10 years ago, but yeah, 10 years ago too. But the windows, the painting, and the power wash, I'm assuming that's what that's going to include, because we have a 40th anniversary coming up, I believe, this year for the Harbor Key. So we have to do some sprucing up, and it looks like it needs a lot of work. So I don't know if that's just how I feel about the 1% increase. How much are we going to get done? I don't know. Madam Mayor, have comments?
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Through the chair, that would be in the operating budget, and we have discussed it with that department that looks after Harbor Key. It's not a full replacement of windows, but power washing, et cetera, will be done. But the full replacement is much more expensive, and we'll be populating the 5 or 10 year capital plan with it. So then council will know when that's coming.
Okay, so the other question is regarding our vehicles. We have a lot of vehicles, and some are coming out of the ERF fund, some are coming out of taxation, and some of the taxation, I understand a vehicle, as a female, I don't care, as long as it works. But I understand if it's gonna cost a lot for maintenance, then we need to look at replacing it. And I've had this discussion already today. And so I do understand that part of it. So I'm looking at, in past councils, we talked about used vehicles too. Some of the vehicles that are out there, some have only 60K on, they're for sale. So is it better for us to look at buying something that's used and using it? Or is it better for somebody to buy something new? And also electric vehicles or something like that, because we now are getting into that age, and eventually we're gonna have to go all electric the way the government's working it. So that's my other question, new and used versus.
Thank you. So we do buy electric vehicles where it makes sense, but maybe Mike, you could speak to used vehicles. I think that's a great question.
Sure, thank you. It's my understanding in the past, we've mainly looked at new vehicles in the city of Port Alberni. However, we've started to look at quality used vehicles as well. So where it makes sense, we will be bringing forward recommendations to purchase used vehicles if it makes sense and they're of a quality that will last for the taxpayers.
Thank you. Councillor Solda.
So just a quick question on the new and used vehicles. Is it in a policy that was it always just new, or there's no policy on that?
Through the chair, there is no current policy. We will be making one, and it'll be an administrative policy where it doesn't need to really be a council policy, as I understand the direction from council is to make a policy on that and make sure that we do include quality used vehicles when we're looking at the fleet.
All right, and the final one, my favorite subject, McLean's Mill. So there's a lot of, like we pay an operator, but there's a lot of expenses too. And I don't know if our director of finance wants to address that. I did ask the total of what McLean's Mill actually is costing, including the operation and all the things that we do. So, and I did ask about, do we pay for the insurance, the hydro and everything? And I give you, Madam Mayor, through to our finance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, Councillor Solda, thank you for also giving me the heads up that you'd be bringing this forward so I can prepare tonight. So, the Alberni Valley Chamber of Commerce, we have a contract, or the amount that we have in the budget this year for the contract is $130,000. It's approximately $75,000 for just the operation of the historical site of the mill, and this is the operation. So we do have hydro, we do have the elevators that have to be maintained, the fire systems for the mill, and other works that are going on just to maintain that historical site. So that's not in the contract that we have with the chamber. We also have the annual contribution of $30,000 that we talked about a little bit earlier. We do have some historic projects that we've funded in the past. So we did have the septic system that is in there. That work is actually ongoing right now because that was in the 2021 financial plan. So that was in that capital plan. And in the future, we've identified a few items that need to be done, but those aren't in the financial plan, such as the log haul. So obviously these are all council decisions, but there is a lot of numbers going in and out of that over the years. Different ways that we've operated that facility. But this is one of the, currently we're at one of the lower costs as far as annual operating of that site, but understanding that we do have some decisions to make as far as how we maintain that and the capital that we need to spend into the future. So I think we could provide a summary of the expenditures that we see for the committee and the Q&A that outlines what has been spoken here tonight. And then on the insurance side, the property insurance is through one line item in the financial plan. But when we look at the assets that we have there, it's about, I think about $6,500 if we do the prorated amount for insurance just on that site. That also includes the hatchery and the dam, so we insure those two items. And that's about, I think about 37% of that. So I think when there's a few items that aren't in that specific line item for McLean's Mill that are covered through insurance. So there's little things like that aren't specifically in the McLean's Mill line item.
So thank you for that. I would like to see us sharpen our pencil in the McLean's Mill. I'm glad the operators agreement, we're bringing it down. I mean, obviously that decreased, but how do we make it where it can go even down more? Do we put fencing around the buildings and leave them where the people don't go in and we don't do any more work on them? Something to bring that cost down. People will still enjoy it. I've gone to historic sites before and they've fenced it off and you can only see inside, or you see a film and here's what it was like. So there has to be another way of sharpening it down, Madam Mayor. I'm going to go through the rest of my notes on my computer screen and I'll let somebody else answer questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Solda. Who's next? Councillor Dame.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got a bunch of questions, but I won't ask them all tonight, but I'll bring some to you maybe later this week for the next meeting. But given that we've discussed a bit that another way of keeping taxes at bay is to increase revenue rather than just cutting budget, and so I'm interested in sort of the process of looking at our recreation fees, and I know that that's very likely a part of the master plan that's coming down the line. But if we were to try to speed that up or make some steps in that direction in the meantime, I'm just wondering what that process would look like. And I mean, I don't even think that we probably have time to do that this budget season, but some sort of review of our current recreation fees would be, in my opinion, one area that we could look at increasing our revenue. And I noticed that that was noted in the report as well, that under council direction that could be included. Yeah, so through the chair. Thank you.
Mike.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I have asked all the directors to look at their areas and to see where revenue can be. Councillor Haggard brought a motion forward where we should research and look at those items. So by the end of budget, all directors will be bringing forward places where we can or see increases in fees for service. Comparative to several communities. So the directors will be trying to use the same communities, so then we have a common community basis on what's being charged, and we'll bring it forward for council to consider before the end of the budget. So some of those will be minor increases to revenues, but year over year would make a difference. So we have tasked the directors with doing that. So hopefully you'll see that coming forward shortly.
Other comments? Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have any questions with regards to the specific numbers as set out by the director. I wanted to express my gratitude to the director and all of the directors that have put together this plan. This is kind of the end of the process, in that these are the numbers and these are the budgets that are going to be required for the coming year. I recognize that it's our job to find efficiencies to reduce costs and to find sources of revenue to increase revenue. And those two working together are the plus minus that will keep taxes at bay as much as we can. I just wanted to recognize that the council in the past year and 4 months that I've been on it, I found has been very active in trying to find those solutions. The budget time is not a time when we up and decide what's going to happen at McLean Mill or what's going to happen with painting the streets. Those are things that we deal with constantly throughout the year. And it's been my experience, although it's anecdotal, and I can't point a finger at it, that this council has been very proactive in trying to find those places where we can save money, and has a number of plans going forward to find more places where we can save money and increase revenues. So like I said, I'd like to express my gratitude for the report and assure, for what it's worth, the taxpayers that we are always keeping an eye on it, and we have an eye to the future to continue holding taxes at bay as much as possible. I say that because it's my money too.
Thank you, Councillor Patola. Councillor Solta.
Just a couple of more questions. And regarding youth programs on page 37, 27170, is there a reason why our youth programs have been taken right down? Like, there's not a lot of youth activities as it is. I'm glad there's swimming and everything. I totally believe it because I have grandchildren and everything, and we're surrounded by water. But the whole thing is the youth programs. We talk about it during, Madam Mayor, during council meetings before about how we don't do enough for our youth, and we hear that from the public. So just kind of curious to know why that is so down in I know we have to cut areas, but youth.
Madam Chair, when we look at the programming, we look at child programming, we look at the adult programming and the youth, and it might have been coded a little bit differently as far as the revenue in the past, but we do have the staff working on and making sure that it's reflective of what's being incurred. We made some changes in our softwares. With that, I think also the programming staff look at what will be required in the year and where the revenue would be. And I think they program based on what they feel they can undertake, and also with that the best use of their time. And I'm not, I can't give a specific answer on the details of what specific youth programs were included in prior years and were not, but I think we can bring back some information on that change and give some certainty that we aren't cutting anything, and it might have been a change to how we're allocating, and then what programs we are providing for youth, and it might be a classification change.
Could you just maybe speak to as well if this is a change as a result of Nights Alive not being active anymore, or were those funds reallocated to other youth programs?
Good question, Madam Chair. So the Youth Alive was in Gyro, and that was reduced in prior years. So the youth programs are within the Parks and Rec programming. So it's a different line item that Councillor Solda is looking at, I believe.
Thank you. Councillor Solda and then Councillor Mealy.
Okay, so 2 questions here. 2 more. So regarding the sign, I know it's in the budget, there was 25,000, and I'm assuming that's for work we have been doing on the sign. And I noticed in the capital projects, which is not budgeted for, $80,000. Now, having the discussion earlier, that's for both. I mean, you +2, and that gives you your actual amount. And I am glad it's on pause for the $80,000, because we need to look at, Madam Mayor, when it comes to making that, the Port Alberni sign, we need to look at a cheaper version of it or something like that, or a less expensive version of it. That's a lot of money to put out on a sign, and I'm not sure if I'm there yet. I just wanted to bring that up, because when I saw the 80,000 projected in a capital budget, that was like, whoa, and then 25,000, that's already there. I don't know if anybody wants to talk on that. And then I have one more, and then that.
Thanks for the question. Yeah, we paused the sign partially because of when the costs came in, where they were at, but also we feel that the community needs to undergo a branding exercise. And when you brand a community, usually what comes out of that is what the community wants to be and how you represent yourselves. And coming out of that, there'd be more discussion about signage, wayfinding signs, etc., for the community. So there are some steps that staff felt necessary that had to happen, but I believe the design of the sign is complete, and this was to have it installed. So that's my understanding. Maybe the Director of Finance may be able to highlight a little more on that project, but without going down a rabbit hole too far, that's why we did put it on pause.
I will just say that we've gone through multiple branding exercises in this community, and the last thing I would ever support is another one. We have spent so much money on branding exercises that we have not implemented, and nobody's ever happy with the brand that is come up with. So yeah, I would like to see us, I don't support moving forward with the sign in this year, but yeah, absolutely not another branding exercise. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to just track back to Councillor Solda's talk about youth services and programs. So there was just a little under $10,000 down this year, but children's programs are up about $55,000, and adult programs are up about $30,000, and leisure services are up about $13,000. So when I saw that, I took that as just a change on where the money is. That's all it was.
Absolutely. Thank you. Councillor Solda.
And the last question. There's been a lot of discussion in the public about ACRD, and a lot of people, there's a lot of new people in our community that doesn't understand how we have 2 reps and how the money works, and that we pay, people don't realize we pay 60% on services we buy. So maybe that can be explained, how we have 2 reps and how the voting works, just so, you know, in the budget and that, because we are sending money to the ACRD. So maybe that could be explained, how that whole system works, Madam Mayor.
Can you explain that in 30 seconds, Andrew?
Madam Chair, my knowledge might be a little bit dated since I was at the ACRD and the weighted vote, but I'm sure that the directors from the city that sit on the board can maybe support me if I'm wrong. So there, we do have 2 representatives at the ACRD, and then I think the board is at 14 now. Thank you. And with that, you know, each director is allocated a weighted vote. So when it comes to items, I believe, of financial plan, the weighted vote of the city would count. So when I was there, it was 6 and 5, but I might have changed votes for the city representatives, but that really allows when there is, because of the size of the city and the representatives that we send there and the population that they serve, has a higher weight versus let's say some of the treaty nations that are on the board that might only have 1 vote when it's weighted, or I can't recall the other areas, but they each have their representative based on population.
Yeah, and those numbers are determined to kind of help give capacity for decision making based on how much we're paying. So the city of Port Alberni pays approximately 60% of, or 55%, I think, of well, 80% of the Alberni Valley costs, but we pay significantly more, and so we have more votes. So I believe I have 5 votes, and Councillor Haggard has 5 votes, and I think there's 22 votes total, or possibly 24. So we don't have a majority, but we do have a significant amount of votes. That said, those votes are only for financial decisions, and they are not at a committee level. The votes that are being referred to recently were committee level votes, and so we each held 1 vote only. The regional district structure, as you know, is very complicated, and you know, every vote is different, and some votes have different participants, and it's a complex level of government, but it's effectively, it has its own budget, and City of Port Alberni ends up paying the percentage that we are allocated with no additional say to other than the 2 representatives that we have making our decisions in the financial plan along the way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Other questions from council? Okay. Councillor Douglas.
Thanks, just my 2 bits, and I just like, I don't think we can mention this enough. It's already been mentioned about the regional district, but if there's one area where we can reduce our expenditures and enter into a more even, fair-handed financial sharing, it's with the regional district, who has been freeloading off our services for decades. So that's one thing that we're going to keep working on and chipping away, and hopefully end up at a fair sharing of those costs, particularly you know, with policing and our Parks and Rec department. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Absolutely, and I think if we talk about fairness and inequity and hardships, the average home in the city of Port Alberni, as we on this council know, pays about $700 a year towards our CMP cost, and the average home in Beaver Creek, Cherry Creek, Sproat Lake pays between $60 and $80 a year. We all receive the same service. If I phone 911, they come to my house just like if somebody at Sproat Lake phones 911. So that's just one example of the many inequities that exist in our system taxation between the city of Port Alberni and the regional district. I want to echo Councillor Patola's comments. I think that this has been a difficult budget year, and staff has done a fantastic job of taking out as much as possible and making sure that this really is a status quo budget. The area that I will say it is not status quo is in capital. And I think that's absolutely necessary. We have aging infrastructure, we have assets that need to be replaced, and capital, because it is, each line is a specific project or a specific item. Capital seems to be the area that council after council after council have kind of, you know, picked away at to reduce things from the budget, to bring costs down, and we can't do that any longer. And I don't think we have been doing that the last few years. We've made a real effort to replace our infrastructure, to take on major projects. I mean, a few years ago, we completed the biggest infrastructure project the city of Port Alberni has ever undertaken in our sewage lagoon. Those things come with very significant costs. This year, we have $7 million in capital projects in our budget. And I just want to say, I think every single one of those projects is absolutely necessary. $1.8 million of our budget increase is coming from taxation for capital projects. Building, repair vehicles that need to be replaced, lives that have already been extended in vehicles, and combined sewer overflow issues and road work and everything else. The type of projects that taxpayers in the community ask us on a regular basis to take on, and we are taking them on, and we're taking them on at a greater level than councils before us have. So I think it's really important work, and I want to thank staff for bringing all of these projects forward. I don't think that there is a single thing in the capital plan that I would suggest we remove. I think all this work needs to be done. My question is, are there alternative funding sources? We have been given the Growing Communities Fund. I think it was $5.5 million from the province. It needs to be spent in a number of years. I know that we can keep it in a reserve and just earn a little bit of interest on it and tax people now for the work that needs to be done. But I wonder how many of these projects could be funded through the Growing Communities Fund, because they are very worthwhile projects that need to be done. They need to be done now. So why would we keep it sitting in a reserve when we can spend it on infrastructure renewal? So I don't necessarily need a number, because I know the Growing Communities Fund was a grant that was given to us with a lot of restrictions on what it can and cannot be spent on. But I'm wondering if the Director of Finance could bring us back maybe a report on what could and what could not be drawn from the Growing Communities Fund, so that Council can consider if we want to utilize that to bring down the tax increase this year without having to kick out of our budget really worthwhile projects for our infrastructure that need to be done. And if you want to comment on that at all, but if not, bringing a report would be wonderful. Thank you. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate that. And I do echo the comments as well for staff and finance department for doing what they have so far. And it's just extraordinary to go through it all. I just want to touch on the key to key merely because it was something that was brought up by the public earlier on today. Council knows that the last time we discussed this, that I requested council to look at delaying it for a year. The answer that I got was understandable, is that costs will rise. We have everything, contracts are in place. Plus we have to do it in a certain amount of time before, as for our grant funding. So what I will say, and going back to it, is I would like to give the Madam Mayor kudos for that meeting, for not taking it out of taxation, for taking it out of the Growing Communities Fund, so that is easier on the community. But I will also agree with Mr. Kangiser that coming out of reserves is indeed tax dollars and can be considered taxation in my mind at some point. So I just want to clear that up, that I do agree with Mr. Kangiser. And if going ahead with the project is the cheapest alternative in the end, I totally understand that. So we're at a point, and to the lady who said we need referendums, please understand that when council makes their decision, it goes to the next council as well. There are members on this council that were not part of that decision, and we work with what we've got here. And so I appreciate the mayor for going forward, also representing the council's wishes as the mayor should, and moving forward with this project. But I will agree with Mr. Kangiser as well, though, that it's reserve money, but it is taxation. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for clarity, I think Mr. Kangiser was referring to a comment that was made where I think there was a misunderstanding of what the question was. I wasn't the chair at that meeting, but I think our CAO answered a question, and it was asked how much of the project was coming from taxation, and the answer was coming, being funded this year from city reserves or from taxation or something like that. The answer was 1.2 million. I think that the question was meant to be of the whole project, but I think the question was understood to be how much is being funded this year effectively. Because right after that, we got an email from Mr. Smith, Roland Smith, saying, no, that's not correct information. It was $3.5 million that was funded from city reserves and taxation. And so I think that there was, and I've heard that comment from the public a couple of times, and I've just said no. I think that there was a misunderstanding of what was being asked, and what was referred to was the portion of the budget that is this year in the budget and not from the whole project. So yeah, I think just a misunderstanding there. Because we've always said along the way that, well, we've always been transparent about what the cost of the project is. The cost of the project has not grown, and the funding sources have not changed other than in public budget sessions. Other comments or questions? Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, just move that the Committee of the Whole receive the report 2024-2028 financial plan dated February 13th, 2024 and provide recommendations to Council.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Patola. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And just confirming, I didn't make a motion on a report from the Growing Communities Fund, but is staff comfortable just moving forward with that? I think there was general agreement from council. Okay, thank you. Okay, we will move on to item number 2. We have the toxic drug strategies from Sechot First Nation and Community Action Team. And we will go to our community, or sorry, not community action team, but our Mary Claire. Can't remember what your new position is.
That's okay. So, through the chair, thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. I'm pleased to be here tonight to talk about the report to the Committee of the Whole to consider recommending that Council endorse the Port Alberni Community Action Team blueprint of transformative strategies to the toxic drug catastrophe for the Alberni Valley and BC. Just as a quick background, as follow-up to the corporate officer's recommendation to become an administrative committee of the city, just a reminder, the provincial health, public health emergency declaration was made on April 14th, 2016. In 2018, Port Alberni was one of the communities identified as being high risk for the opioid overdose crisis, it was being called. And one of the first community action teams was identified here in Port Alberni. The Port Alberni Community Action Team, or referred to as the CAT, is an administrative committee of the city, as a recent administrative committee of the city, reporting to the manager of community safety and social development, myself. So in your package, starting on page 63, there's a number of different documents that were provided. The first one was the Port Alberni CAT's terms of reference, a list of the member organizations. It's always a fluctuating thing. The introduction of the blueprint strategy document, as well as the blueprint strategy document itself, which is starts on page 77. The blueprint really builds on the leadership of the Sechot First Nation, who published the 2020 Surviving the Flood, Reconstructing the Village Opioid Crisis Report, followed up by a 2-day call to action forum in March of 2023, and then subsequently developed the 2024 Alberni Valley Toxic Poison Drugs Opioid Crisis Strategy, which you have in your package as well. The Port Alberni CAT participated in all of these events, as well as on the working group for the 2024 action-oriented strategy for the Alberni Valley. In fact, today, Chief Ken Watts spoke about the strategy from Sechot and the blueprint from the Community Action Team as sister documents. Really, they go hand in hand. The reason why these documents are really important are a couple of statistics that came out of the BC Coroner's report at the end of December 2023. In the province, there was 2,522 suspected unregulated drug deaths. It's the highest number of suspected deaths ever recorded in a year, 5% higher than the previous year, and equating to 7.2 deaths per day. Locally, by local area, the highest death rates were in Vancouver Central North, Hope, Alberni Clayoquot Terrace, and Greater Campbell River. Alberni Clayoquot had 37 deaths in 2023, equating to 1.28 per 100,000 population. Alberni Clayoquot has the highest number of deaths per 100,000 on Vancouver Island. So turning back to the blueprint is really outlines short, easier to implement solutions and longer term strategies, plans and policies that the Community Action Team, which is comprised of several organizations, roughly around 30, they all support the documentation or the blueprint to help resolve the challenges of the unregulated drug supply in BC. There are 4 key sections of the blueprint document, which I'm sure everybody has read. A review of the 4 guiding principles of the Community Action Team, an executive summary, which includes key documents that have been produced over the last several years from the BC government, key drivers and causes of the toxic drug catastrophe, and then solutions and recommendations. Today, when the blueprint was unveiled to the public and the media, the co-chair who is with me today, Ron Merck, he acknowledged that not all the recommendations or actions will be endorsed by everyone. It's meant to be an evergreen, an evolving document. This is a complex issue. And it's also intended to be a comprehensive plan for the Alberni Valley and throughout BC. Staff recommends supporting the blueprint document to demonstrate council's and the city's commitment to find solutions to address the impacts of the opioid crisis. In addition, staff recommend adding the city's logo to the final document. There are no financial implications in endorsing this blueprint document. The Manager of Community Safety and Social Development will continue to support the Community Action Team on an ongoing basis. The final blueprint of transformative strategies will be supported by the Manager of Communications if needed and as needed. Endorsing this document helps fulfill Council's strategy, a strategic priority of fostering a complete community, safe, healthy, and inclusive, within the 2023-2027 Corporate Strategic Plan. In summary, the report is for the Committee of the Whole to review the document and consider recommending Council endorse the Port Alberni's CAT blueprint document and the city's commitment to find solutions to address the ongoing toxic drug crisis. Ron Merck has joined me today as the co-chair of the Community Action Team. He knows the document intimately and would be happy to answer any questions about the blueprint document as needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary Claire, for the report. Questions, comments? Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I want to thank Ron Merck, who is the co-chair of the Community Action Team, for all his hard work and dedication. He spends many, many, many hours working on this crisis in our community. The Port Alberni CAT team is often recognized by the province for how strong it is. It's probably one of the strongest CAT teams in our province, and that's because of the hard work and dedication that Ron puts in this project. So I think this is going to be a pretty easy document to endorse, but I think the role of council is to determine what will we'll be able to work on within our community and pick and choose those things that we can work on, but also pick and choose things that we want to advocate for when we go to things like UBCM and talk to the Ministry of Health and Addictions. So we can't do it all, but let's pick the things that we can work on. And as Mary Claire suggested, what can we do short-term, mid-term, and long-term? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Solda.
I would agree with Councillor Haggart has just said, but when I look at the Vancouver Island Region one, and I look at there's 864,000 people on Vancouver Island, and we only have 21 beds in Nanaimo, 5 in Courtenay, 12 in Victoria, 5 in Port Hardy, and 8 youth beds, totaling of 43 detox beds. That's not enough. And when you have that much in population. So when people go to detox, I mean, it's hard to get in at times. There's obviously a waiting list. And the other thing too is that when you come out, you can have detox, you can be there for a year or two. Now what? You know, I don't have a place to live. Where do I go? So it's easier to go back on the street and do what you're doing, right? And then the cycle starts over and over. So there's a lot more that has to be looked at. And it's not just because I want to do the drug. It's because what do I have? And that has to start somewhere. And totally agree with advocating to the levels of government. And it's so many factors that's involved. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And as council's aware, we have submitted a request for a meeting with Island Health jointly with Sashot and Hoopachasset to put forward a specific request for community stabilization beds in the community, which is not medical detox, but a step down from that, a model that's working really well elsewhere. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And as several of you know anyway, I've done a lot of work in this field over the years, and I want to express my gratitude to everybody in the community that's been working on this, including our council and CAT team, and everybody in the mental and medical health fields. One of the things, or two things that stand out in my mind from my experience is we don't have enough treatment facilities, and the treatment facilities we have are not for long enough. And we don't have long enough recovery programs that are available, and as Councillor Solda mentioned, we don't have effective exit programs that are available. So those are some of the things I think we as a council, when we interact with our other councillors and other people in the provincial and federal government, that we can perhaps emphasize is we need longer and more effective recovery programs, and there's very few people I've talked to who don't agree with that. They may have other issues on safe supply and those sort of topics, which I also believe we need, but almost everybody agrees that we need longer recovery programs to help people get rebuilding their lives and come back into the workforce and help building our community together again. So really appreciate all the work that everyone's doing, and I really appreciate the way us as a council are embracing this head on. We're not trying to kick people out of the community as in some other areas people are doing. We're embracing these people. These are our people. They're our children. They're our fathers, our mothers, brothers, sisters, and they're us. So we're embracing this wholeheartedly and taking it on. I really respect that with everybody. So I just wanted to utter those few words. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also would like to express my gratitude to all the individuals who worked on this report. I found it to be quite in-depth and extensive. And I'm going to make some comments that begin with my view that this vote that will come up as to whether or not council endorses this report is something more akin to a free vote in the legislature, where people vote by their personal beliefs and not with regards to the work that's going into the report. I have some personal views on this matter that are quite extensive, and I will not bore you with them today. This would take quite some time, but I am very open to discussing them with anyone who'd be interested as to what the foundation for the further comments I'm going to make are. I agree very much with Councillor Haggard when she says we need to work on what we can. And there are many things that the city can work on. My comments about what is or is not in the report are not a criticism of the report because, as Mary Claire pointed out, people will not necessarily agree and support everything that's in the report. And that's where I find myself today. There are things which we can do, which I just mentioned in addition to the work that's been suggested in the report with regards to petitioning government. The concept of universal guaranteed income is one that is fundamental to this whole problem. If with a universal guaranteed income, the issues regarding affordability of housing and the affordability of anything actually diminishes significantly so that people can make their own choices and government doesn't have to be instructive on where people will live or how they'll live. So it does go hand in hand with providing housing, but it's yet another issue that we can work on. The city itself could develop plans, and I know we've discussed these, and I want the public to know that we've discussed plans for how the city can be involved in housing, and the city has been involved in housing. I read an article today that there was a municipality somewhere in BC that has just decided to use the entire MRDT to put towards low-cost housing. So those are things that we can do. And no doubt, the conclusion of the report that says we need more is absolutely correct. There is not enough beds. There are too many people jumping in the river upstream, not enough people to pull them out downstream. One thing that I noted in the report that was very important was the SROI reference, which is the social return on investment. And I think that in evaluating issues and solutions to issues, there is an opportunity cost that often is not evaluated and should be. I'm not here to make a judgment call on what the proper decision would be, but for example, free needle exchanges should be balanced against individuals of low income that have to pay for needles for diabetics. That's an inequality that should at least be considered in resolving the issue. It's not all one-sided. It's an issue for our community as a whole, our society as a whole. And there are many people in our society that face difficulties for whatever reason, whether it be government policy or commercial capitalism. We all have struggles. And as neighbors, we support each other in those struggles. There are a few items in the report which are personal to me, and I, as a result, will not be supporting the report, even though I recognize the hard work that's gone into it and the many good suggestions that are there. And some of these are, and again, not a criticism, but an explanation. I find that the language in the report is somewhat inflammatory, and that does not represent my views on the issue. I fully recognize that they may be appropriate, accurate, and even the best ways of representing the author's views and the CAT team's views. They just aren't views that I shared. I would not call this a catastrophe, but I might choose a different word. So it's of little impact, my views on that, but it's an explanation as to why I personally don't feel that I can support this report. In contrast, the report from the SACHAT being set in a slightly different tone is one that I can fully support. At item 4.7, there's a suggestion that there be government-imposed consequences on people for not meeting some metrics that are unilaterally imposed. That's a concept that I simply can't support. It's, to me, is a little overreaching. Further, there's comments about the criminal justice system, and my personal experience is not reflected in those comments. I find it to be much different. So those are two reasons that I would can't support this. But I do alternately support the more general and deferential recommendations in the Seychat report, such as with regards to the Portugal experiment, that the recommendation there is to refer to experts in the Portugal experiment as opposed to simply stating conclusions about the Portugal experiment that may or may not be correct and are not substantiated by facts. So those are my comments. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for indulging me in this time. Thank you to my fellow councillors for indulging me in the time to read this report that was granted to me at the last meeting. I fully appreciate it. And again, my gratitude and thanks to the authors of the report, the work of the CAT team, and I look forward to continued intelligent, logical problem solving in the future. This is certainly something that we cannot ignore. We must make the world a better place. We must make Port Alberni a better place.
Thank you for your comments. Other comments from council? Okay. Seeing none, would somebody like to make a motion? Councillor Haggard.
I would like to move that the Committee of the Whole recommend that Council endorse the Port Alberni Community Action Team document entitled Blueprint of Transformative Strategies to the Toxic Drugs Catastrophe for the Alberni Valley in British Columbia, dated February 20th, 2024.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Haggard, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Other comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. And on the Sechot portion of this, we don't have, I'll go to Councillor Mealy.
I'll make that motion, Madam Mayor, then, that the Committee of the Whole recommend that Council support the next steps with respect to implementation and advocacy for resourcing Alberni Valley toxic poison drugs opioid crisis strategy through a smaller political working group / action team.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Douglas. Comments on this portion? Okay, seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And Councillor Solda.
Just a quick question. If anybody in the public wants a copy of these strategies, where can they obtain them? That would be really important if they want to read them.
Thank you. So in our agenda today for this meeting, they'll be publicly available, but I'm wondering if they're on the city's website or if the CAT team has a website that they would be on as well. Okay, great. Go ahead, Mary. Go ahead.
Through the chair, yes, they're available right now through the Community Action Team's website, and that's as far as I know.
Wonderful, thank you. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the Committee of the Whole recommend that Council direct staff to prepare a letter of support and authorize the Mayor in signing the declaration of commitment with respect to the Alberni Valley Toxic Poison Drugs Opioid Crisis Strategy as circulated.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Patola. Any comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks for the discussion, everyone, and for the report. Okay. Item number 3, we have update on master planning. Wonderful. Welcome.
Just press it. Okay, got it. Thanks. Sorry, first time here. Sorry. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'm Dave Arsenault, Project Manager with Engineering and Public Works. I'm here to present a short update on our city master planning efforts. So as I'm sure you're aware, in recent years, council and department directors have recognized a need for more comprehensive strategic planning of our capital investments in particular, and our levels of service. So to that end, there's been a number of master plan projects directed to be undertaken. There's 7 in all that I'll be managing, all kicking off this year. So just quickly, the 7 master plans. The first one is the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Departmental Master Plan, which includes facilities management and urban forest planning. Then Fire Services Master Plan for Port Alberni FD, Stormwater Master Plan, Transportation Master Plan, which includes active transportation and trail network planning, and Watershed Protection Plan. So those 5 plans will all be funded out of the allocation directed by council from the Growing Communities Fund. We're also planning to update our climate action planning using money from the carbon reserve. And that plan, because it affects all departments and interconnects with all of the master plans, would be done its own separate mini plan, consulting with all of the other plans, and including the official community plan. And then lastly, the wastewater and water master planning will be funded from water and sewer reserves. Donnie, do you have the schedule on the last page of the report there? I don't know if people can already see it in the agenda.
Page 147.
Okay. Yes, thank you. So this is our schedule that I've come up in consultation with the directors and the project sponsors for initiating all of these plans. So as you can imagine, doing 7 master plans at once, all with different content, and me being new to the city, having joined in December, there's a little bit of learning curve to get to this point, to get enough information together to be able to put together procurement packages for open procurements for all of these projects, meetings with directors and managers and information gathering and preparing documents. But we do have the first procurement request for expressions of interest out on the street now. It's closing this week on Thursday. So we're expecting expressions of interest for consultants for Parks, Recreation, Culture, Master Plan, including facilities. And we expect by the end of this month, we'll have the request for expressions of interest for the next 5 master plans, all as a single request for expressions of interest. So consultants in that case will be able to submit based on which categories, which master plans they have expertise in. Some consultants will have expertise in multiple areas to be able to submit expression of interest for multiple master plans at once. Some may be more specialized and just request pre-qualification for one. So then the second stage of procurement for each of these, which is shown in green on the schedule, will be once we have pre-qualified lists of consultants. Only those consultants that that are past the bar of meeting adequate qualifications will be invited to submit proposals on the detailed scope that we issue. So award and kickoff for Parks, Recreation, and Culture, we're estimating late April. And all of these procurements are going to be staggered by a few weeks so that we will have the last of them up and running with consultants on board by the end of the summer. Lastly, I'm just going to mention that we've decided, because of most of these plans will have public consultation components. Some of them will have a greater need for public consultation than others, but recognizing that these, along with the OCP, the city on a lot of separate projects is going out to the community and looking for input and consultation. So to make that more efficient and ensure we get participation, we've decided that for that public consultation component, we should run that as a single combined effort led by our manager of communications that will work with all of the master plan teams, and then wherever it's appropriate and the timing is efficient, combine public consultation efforts that relate to multiple master plans into single events and communications. So that's all I have to present, but I'm available to take questions.
Thank you for that report. I know that this is a huge undertaking for the city and something that is long overdue, but will really put us on a good path to being able to improve our capital, improve our infrastructure, and plan more effectively as we move forward in the future. So really happy to see the progress that's been made already on just even aligning this portion of it. And yes, it sounds like a very large undertaking for just getting started. Questions from council? Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wonder if the manager could inform us whether or not, since this seems to be a very long process, there will be, what type of work will be able to continue during the planning process? Because I'm assuming that some capital projects will have to be put on hold or should be put on hold so they form part of the plan. That's the whole point of the plan. But does that mean that we're doing nothing for the next year, year and a half?
No, but I don't know if I'm the best person to answer in terms of specific projects. But really, that'll be up to the discretion of the directors, things that they think are too high of a priority or don't really need a master plan to inform that they need to be done and when they need to be done. So as part of the scoping for the master plan, the RFPs will identify which things are basically already going down the tracks and we don't really need to discuss or consider planning or prioritization, and which things the priority or importance of which or the timing of which is still dependent on strategic planning in relation to everything else. So there will be things in each department, I think, that are identified as this just needs to move forward. We don't really need the master plan to do that. So there are a number of examples of things that are going forward that were just out of my scope. Will just be tied into all the financial planning at the end if they're longer term projects. But
if I can just add to that through the chair, when we got together before the manager was actually employed, we planned on this year being light on capital projects. We are still doing much needed capital repairs and investing in our infrastructure, but we did put off several projects until we're done the master planning process to make sure we're investing where it's most needed. So we did look at this as a strategic point and tried to only bring forward projects that were either already designed or already moving forward and that met council's strategic priorities.
Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I see that the schedule that's presented it ends in September. Obviously, there's a process that needs to be put in place. Is there any kind of a thumbnail estimate as to when the processes will be completed?
I think that's a very good question, and I fully expected to be asked that. I have some, thoughts and speculation on what's realistic and achievable for some plans more than others, the ones that I have more experience with. But really, we're doing these with expert consulting partners because we need their expertise, and they're going to have a better idea of how long these things are going to take and how many steps we need to take. I don't think they're all going to run the same amount of time. Some of them are going to be more complicated than others. I think wastewater and water master plans typically at municipalities tend to take a little longer than other types of master planning because the complexities of the technical issues. But one thing I would say is that, from our end, the parts of the process that we do have control over, getting things out the door and getting consultants on board, everybody's been very eager and wanting to get this going as quickly as possible. So I'm getting the support I need from managers and directors, and that's moving along smoothly. We will be evaluating proposals partly on the basis of the schedule, what they can deliver in. So consultants that feel that they can deliver on a tighter timeline will score better in the proposal evaluations and be more likely to be awarded. But really, yeah, it wouldn't be a good idea for me to throw out dates because they're mostly guesses at this point for me.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One last question, which might even be for the CAO, I'm not sure, is we've spoken about master plans for a fair amount of time now and indicated council's direction to proceed in that manner. We certainly budgeted for it. I'm just wondering if, just for clarity, and this isn't the most urgent thing, but somewhere along the line, could we get a report, or even not a report, just an example of what a master plan looks like so that we'll know what we're getting? I think we may have all have our own particular ideas, and I'm sure members of the public have a wide array of ideas as well. And it'd be great to have just an example so that we kind of can get close to, if not on the same page.
I think that's a fantastic idea. And some of them you can Google. So when we started looking at this as a concept, I looked up a Parks and Rec master plan to see what it was kind of all encompassing, just to get a better idea of basically what we are lacking here. But it would be great if maybe staff did pick out a couple from other communities that are similar to the types of plans we are trying to achieve here, so that we don't just see what another community has for their Parks and Rec master plan, but rather, what are we kind of expecting to have included in ours? So I think that'd be a great thing, even just to send along to council. Okay. Mike?
Yeah, if I can just add through the chair, master planning is different in all communities, but usually there's two documents that are presented. There is the outward facing one, and then there behind the scenes, there's also ones that tie into the 5 and 10-year capital plan. Some of that would be front facing, but some of the design standards too would also be hopefully garnered through the process. So staff can definitely look up some master plans that would be similar to ours, but we may not have the full scope and depth of what those plans actually delivered to the community.
Thank you. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. And David, welcome to our happy crew.
Thank you, Councillor.
I've got a question. It may be more applicable to our CEO. And it's really in light of some correspondence we've received over the last little while. And one of the things that threatens us more than taxes or rent or putting food on the table is like wildfires. And I'm just wondering where in our master planning and how we're doing. Like I see, watershed protection could be there, climate change action, fire services. So whereabouts did preparation for wildfire events fit into the master planning part? I don't know if you'd be able to answer that now, but I just thought it'd be a good topic for everybody here as well, because it's, if you look at places like Lytton and what they've gone through, and we're surrounded by forest here, it'd be very easy to happy. We've been very, very lucky so far. I was wondering if we could just maybe touch on that, and maybe our CAO could just let us know, and also satisfy the correspondence that we've had written to us about that topic.
Through the chair, yeah, I can start, and if Mr. Arsenault has more to add, you feel free to. But I believe it's going to be covered by multiple. Wildfires is pretty complicated because they're found in our ravines that could be parks or could be on the interface zones on the fringe of the town. So yes, our climate change one will definitely touch on it, but so will our parks recreation, and so will our master fire plan. So there are several of the master plans that will touch on it. But then also there's different strategies on how to mitigate and also how we respond to it. So that'll be interesting. I'm very curious on what the recommendations are for our fire department and how we can be prepared on that, and also some of our mutual aid agreements with surrounding areas and how they are. I believe that ACRD will also be part of that, as they're going to be updating our Fire Smart and our risk for emergency management part. So I know that they're working on that as well. Consecutively as we're going through this process. So all those will feed into it. So in short, I think many of these master plans will touch on the risks and the mitigation. I don't know.
Through the chair, I can just add to that by saying that there are a number of different ways you could address the issues that affect multiple master plans. So there's no one right way to do it. Tentatively, we're talking about having the fire services master plan take the lead on wildfire risk management. But obviously it has Parks and Recreation and Culture has a significant role because they're managers and stewards over a lot of our city-owned natural areas. So that would be an example of an area which would be led and housed under one master plan, but involve consultation between departments and other master plan teams to ensure we create a plan that serves the interests of both.
Thanks. And then just as a further thought, I'm wondering if we're pursuing avenues of funding, whether it be through, we had our union representatives here earlier, the industry itself, and provincial and federal governments. I wonder if we have any avenues of funding as a way of preparation for getting ready for such an event.
Through the chair, I think I can answer that a little bit. We're always on the outlook for grants. And we are continuing to talk with the province and federal government about some of the programs that are out currently and how they may better suit the island, or especially Port Alberni or the Alberni area. So on those.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, just had an indication from the union gentleman wanting to speak.
Thank you. When you're talking about forest fires, one of the things you can do when you're lobbying the government and stuff like that is there's going to be raw log exports. We know that. That comes from private lands. We see it happening. If they're going to bring out the good wood, they got to bring out the bad wood too. They got to bring out the pulpwood. When you leave the pulpwood in the forest after you've logged, that's fuel for the fires. And when they burn it, instead of bringing it to the pulp industry, that's not carbon neutral. So if you want to be more carbon neutral, bring out the pulpwood when you bring out the good wood. Enforce these guys. Make sure they do that to feed our industry, and then you clean up the forest floor while you're doing it. That's better logging practices. We all have to make sure that happens. So I know they bring the wood to the mills. I know they take it to the ships. They got to bring the pulpwood to us instead of leaving it on the forest floor. That's their fuel for fire. And I know they went to Finland, looked at their forest policy practices there. They're trying to implement it here. I just want to say, I didn't bring that up in my speech. I came back. I also brought back business cards. And I just want to get that point across. That's one of the things that we're going to bring up with the government, that, okay, Mosaic can go in and take the good wood. They have to bring out the bad wood too. And I'm not saying bad wood. I'm just pulpwood. Various grades. That's my point on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that was a specific part of the conversation we had today. So I completely agree. So thanks for that.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we've brought up. And I'm going to leave some cards for everybody.
Councillor
My
Mealy.
contact information.
Thank you. Councillor Mealy, did you have your hand up? Okay. Other councillors? Okay. Seeing none, would somebody like to move receipt of this report?
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Solda. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you very much. And thank you for the report. It's a helpful update. Move on to item number 4, update on our GIS system.
Through the chair, good evening, Mayor Council. I'm here tonight to provide the Committee of the Whole an update on our GIS, or Geographical Information System. As a quick prelude to it, this feels really loud. What GIS is it's a very, very powerful tool that, in my opinion, is one of the greatest integration tools that we as a community can have. Its functionality and efficiencies would basically go across every department that we provide levels of service to every resident. I've worked in other municipalities where, for instance, it's the parks folks have out in the field iPads, and they can add information on work orders on field maintenance. Our utilities crews out in the field can look up brakes or valve conditions. It extends to our planning department. It literally across every department makes people's jobs easier and gives them tools to complete their tasks better and more efficiently. So as a quick background, in May of 2023, we completed a workshop with our consultant, Urban Systems, to identify tasks required to provide a mature and more robust GIS department in order to provide those tools as they just described. From that work, it was identified that we had quite a large gap in capacity with our internal team and who we had working in those areas. Short term, we are bridging that gap by utilizing consulting services to assist us in trying to maintain or at the level of service that we provide today. In the report that I provided you in the figure 1, it shows our current organizational structure, and we essentially have 2 positions that work in the GIS field. One is considered full-time GIS with the planning technician. It's a little bit more part-time in their role and what they do. But with both roles, there's no real oversight or defined responsibilities related to the GIS and the data spatial management. Tasks typically assigned to a GIS coordinator level role are currently being completed by these folks off the side of their desk. Working with our consultant and looking at increasing the level of service that we can provide in order to give these tools to all of our folks across all departments. There's a very strong need for guidance and stewardship to manage and utilize that geospatial data. It is recommended to create a GIS coordinator role to provide oversight and direction of all GIS operations into a single position. I wanted to point out that the coordinator role is not to be confused with a managerial role for people. It's more so a technical role tasked with leading and coordinating the corporate GIS resources and technical tools. Again, the role is an immediate need, however, short-term requirements are being addressed by our consultant, and the intention would be to prioritize and hire this role in early 2025, and it would be incorporated into the financial plan and the budget approval for next year. Looking at a little bit more long-term vision, a high-functioning, mature GIS department typically resembles figure 3, which comprises 3 to 4 positions, whereas you have a coordinator who acts as a facilitator for the work and administrator of system and processes. You also have an analyst who typically carries out some of the more involved geospatial processing and analytics. And then you, of course, have the GIS technician, usually focused on keeping the data accurate and current in alignment with our current role. The approach considered for that would be more of a 2 to 3 year goal, so we'd be looking to add that to the financial plan for 2026 or 2027. With that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you. Thank you for coming and explaining in a very simple way what GIS is. I know we've had lots of reports on GIS over the years, and I think that for people for the public who don't hear about it on a regular basis, it's hard to understand exactly what it is. But I know too, members of the public who need to get information from the city, how challenging that can be because our systems are just outdated. So I think that GIS is just absolutely core to the functionality of everything that we do in the city, and a very critical amount of work and update that needs to be implemented. So thanks for the work that's been done on it already, and yeah, nice to have the update. Council, questions? Such a good report. There's no questions. Go to Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the Committee of the Whole receive the report update on Geographical Information Systems GIS Department dated February 20th, 2024.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. And we will move on to item number 5. We have policy 3002-5, requests for letters of support. And we'll go to our Deputy Director of Corporate Services.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Due to previous council direction, the report before you requests consideration of the draft request for letters of support policy. From time to time, the city receives requests from organizations and individuals seeking a letter of support for their endeavors. The objective of this policy is to authorize the mayor to provide a letter of support on behalf of the city in certain circumstances, and to clarify which requests for a letter of support should be presented to council for consideration at a council meeting. The city often receives requests for letters of support on short notice without the time available before the deadline of a regular meeting agenda. The draft policy proposes that in certain circumstances, staff be authorized to prepare a letter of support to be signed by the mayor, with the signed letter then placed on a council meeting agenda for information. The policy further sets out the proposed criteria to be met in order for a letter of support to be signed through that process. If a request for a letter of support does not meet the prescribed criteria, the policy includes a process for requests to be brought forward to council for consideration, including that of requests from members of council. Establishing a formal process will enable administration to respond to requests for letters of support in a timely manner, so as to not disrupt the normal course of business while meeting council's objective of supporting the endeavors of organizations and individuals for the betterment of the community. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the report. Questions or comments? Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't have any questions. I think it's quite clear that this is a move towards increasing efficiency, and increasing efficiency is a move towards reducing taxes. So that's a fantastic thing. I do wonder, though, if the policy is a result of the tail wagging the dog, in that some organization may come forward requesting a letter of support, and it's their tardiness that results in it being short notice that then causes the city staff and administration and council to run around and fulfill the request that we would naturally fulfill anyways. So I'm kind of like to have some stricter policy on when those requests will be received, and thereby facilitating the ability for council to review them before the letter is sent. A process that's been described by the deputy director with regards to how administration can prepare the letter and have it pre-signed. I'm thinking that in addition to that, though, it should not be sent until it's at least past an agenda, in the sense of we receive correspondence for information and it's on the agenda. It only gets pulled out if somebody pulls it out. So it's similar to a consent agenda, or similar to for information purposes before the response or the support letter is sent. Those are my only comments. Thank you.
Thank you. And maybe you could speak to how frequently we do get these and how sometimes very short notice they are. And I will just say that you're absolutely right. It is tardiness of societies and others, but often for, I think, very important causes that are easy for us to support. But it absolutely is as a result of last minute requests. So Sarah, maybe if you could just speak a bit more to that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Be pleased to. So we do receive a number of requests throughout the year. I would say on average, I think it would be safe to say 1 to 2, at least one, usually a month. And I will say that yes, most are tardy, and I think that just speaks to the fact that a lot of the public aren't aware of the local government process and the deadlines and how long it takes to get items on an agenda. What Councillor Patola is suggesting as far as having the letter prepared and put on an agenda would certainly streamline that process. However, as Madam Chair mentioned, it is often very close to a deadline that they're looking for.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking of one recently, and I can't remember what it was for specifically. It was a grant request that we had supported before. I want to say the chamber or something. Maybe it wasn't the chamber, but it was something that had been supported before in prior years by council, and I think they needed the letter like the next day. And that may be because a formal letter from the city is not an absolute requirement of the grant, but it maybe gives them a better chance of being successful in the funding that is supporting all of the initiatives that we are typically often supporting. So I would say we might want to, if we were to change the proposed process that's in the report at all, my suggestion would be that we have like a default process for we prepare the letter if it's in line with all of the things already stated, and then we send it to council for any objections within 24 hours or something like that. So that council does have the opportunity to see it before, just in case there are any concerns, but it doesn't slow the process down. I know to us, waiting a couple of weeks or over the summer more, if we don't have as regular council meetings, that's just normal course of doing business. But to some of the organizations that do come forward to us, they are nonprofits running on really minimal budgets with not a lot of staff resources in place, trying to put together grant applications, things that we've supported in the past, things that are not new items to council, and they just do come in last minute. And I wouldn't want us to be in a position where we're not supporting writing those letters that could support that good work as a result of them just not getting the processes. So I'm happy with the policy as written, but if we did want to change it, that would be my personal suggestion, would be that we give kind of a 24-hour lag time and we send the letter out to council in that point of time. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. I just say from my point of view, you know, I've signed a lot of letters of support and I've submitted requests for a great many letters of support on behalf of nonprofits. And it's a very complex process. And the letter of support is just one element that an organization usually has to provide. And it takes a great deal of time and a great deal of their staff time quite often to put the applications together. So I think personally introducing another layer of bureaucracy to that process is somewhat unfair. And this policy I see here has about 5 prerequisites that are mentioned in order for the mayor to sign it. And I'm perfectly comfortable with it as written and allowing the mayor to have the discretion as to whether it needs to be brought forward immediately to council. You know, I think it's very fairly written, and it'll allow us to provide letters of support more efficiently to the organizations that need them. It's just one more document among the very many that they often have to gather for their initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. While some organizations may be just tardy in requesting a letter of support, quite often a grant proposal is a very quick turnaround time, and you don't have a lot of time to get letters of support and getting your proposal written. So I just want to say I have complete faith and trust in the mayor to make those decisions if she feels that she's comfortable signing a letter of support or whether she wants to bring it to council. So I support the policy.
Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So if I take off my hat as councillor and put on my hat as the legal counsel for Satan, devil's advocate, the concerns that need to be considered in creating a policy is that a policy applies to everybody. A policy does not just apply to people or groups where I have already applied for a grant and we fully supported in the past. It applies to groups that want to come to our municipality or who want to support views of individuals in our municipality that perhaps council might not want to support, even though they fall within the confines of the strategic plan. And so when we make a statement as council on behalf of the city, and I've already spoken at length that we're not speaking for each individual, but we are taking a city's position. That city's position should be considered, and a policy that removes that consideration is fraught with potential disaster. So again, I'm all in favor of efficiency. Totally fine. I think the suggestion, Madam Mayor, that you made would be a good one because it increases that efficiency yet retains the discretion of council. I should comment with regards to that discretion of council, although I, like the rest of council, has ultimate faith in your judgment process. I feel that to delegate council's discretion in this matter is contrary to our authorizing legislation, which specifically states in British Columbia, as opposed to other jurisdictions in the world and in Canada, that in British Columbia, with respect, the mayor has no greater power than any other member of council. So to delegate greater powers to the mayor would be A, to confuse the issue, and B, to act contrary to the intent of the legislation. So all of that is to say, let's make it efficient, but let's make it efficient the right way with the appropriate safety matters involved. And I think your suggestion would achieve that. Thank you.
Thank you. I think those are all great comments, and thank you for everyone's confidence in my ability to make decisions. I personally would feel more comfortable if we amended it slightly, just to give that 24-hour grace period before a letter is sent out. I don't think that would, I mean, if anyone's leaving it to less than 24 hours to get their letter of support, then that's really a bit extreme. So I don't think that would hamper us at all. And I would just say that It does take discretion to know, like, you know, when something is coming to council, if it is something that, you know, may look non-controversial at first glance, but might have a history that people may not be aware of. And this policy would not just apply to this council, but would apply to future councils. Our next mayor may not have experience on council even. Might just be a person who's brand new to the city, who we may not want to give that discretion to if they don't have the understanding and history of some of the issues that are coming in front of them. So I think that if council was supportive of amending the policy, and we don't have to do exact wording today, we could just ask staff to bring it back to our next regular meeting of council with some minor changes that implement sort of a 24-hour pause period where it's sent out to council for somebody to object. That would give protection to council as a whole from either my decision-making or the future decision-making of a different mayor that might sit here and may have different feelings about what is within their discretion to send out or not. So, okay. I guess I'll make the motion then, that the committee of the whole recommend that council approve with changes as discussed. I'm just going to say as discussed. Policy 3002-5, request for letter of support. And I'm sorry, that's not a great motion, but it's all recorded. So I think everyone knows generally what we're trying to achieve. Seconded by Councillor Patola. Thank you. Any additional comments? Okay, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. And thank you very much for the report, Sarah. We'll move on to our late item that was added, item H6, and this is to discuss Mosaic.
Madam Mayor, I would like us to send a letter to, or you send a letter with your signature on it, to Mosaic and invite them to come to a committee of the whole or a council meeting, whatever choice, and ask them what their plans are moving forward. We just talked about fuel for fire. Did they leave enough fuel for fire up in that area? You know, because there is lots of logs and it's a mess up there. So just their plans and their future plans of logging in our area. And I think that's really important for this community, although it is a Cherry Creek regional, and it's a regional district thing, but it's overall, it's our city in the long run. So I would love to have that come to council.
Thank you. And I think just for additional context for anyone who might be watching and not aware of the specific issue that's being discussed, there was some logging in an adjacent lot next to what is the name of the cemetery? I'm not sure. But the one next to the Timber Lodge. And just really, I think, a very, very sad display of how a company would log an area next to a graveyard. I drove by there and was just shocked. I know the regional district director for Cherry Creek, whose area that's in, was not told about the plans. I heard from the owner of or the manager, sorry, of the graveyard site that they were told that a buffer would be left and no buffer was left. So they're very disappointed. I saw it and just as a community member was incredibly disappointed. And an official response from Mosaic has been sent to say that consultation with both the City of Port Alberni and the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District happened. And of course, they mean that on a greater scale, that they consult with us on a regular basis, but not actually on specific cut blocks. So I find the response from Mosaic a bit offensive and certainly dishonest and misleading. So I would certainly support inviting them. Mosaic has been a good community partner in an improving way over the last couple of years. We've had a lot more engagement with them on some important issues to us than we have in years leading up to this. But yeah, I was disappointed by that specific action and certainly disappointed by their response as well. To say that we're generally aware of their management plans versus to say they're logging 100% and leaving no buffer next to a graveyard of community members' loved ones are two very, very different things, and I think very misleading for to even state that when there was no phone call, no email, no meeting set up to give anyone a heads up on this. Councillor Solda.
Yeah, and just another thing, when you look at the graveyards, the site itself, it's right up, the logging is right up at graveyard sites, right? And we've had people go up there that I know that have gone to check, make sure nothing was disturbed in their loved ones, and that's really a concern. And also, it's an entrance into our community, so that is really big. There's a business right next door, and which is the Timber Lodge. So, I mean, there's lots of things going on there, and I'm just kind of curious to know what their future plans are. So I'm really glad that you agree on the inviting them. Mosaic has been at the Transportation Committee meeting, and they've been a partner in that. So it'd be great to, let's have some proper communication what's going on with their logging here in the community.
Thank you. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I appreciate Councillor Solda for bringing this forward. It is a site, that's for sure, and a buffer is a joke, if that's what they call it. So, yeah, that needs to be taken care of. And I, I totally agree with having Mosaic here. I know it's in the regional district, but it is in the adjacent proximity of the hole in the wall, which is the city. So, yeah, I'd love to hear them, or at least extend the offer for them to come forward to a council meeting and answer some questions.
Yeah, and I will just say that every time they've come to council meetings, and they have come reasonably regularly over the last few years, they've answered all of our questions. They've, you know, sometimes difficult questions, as, I mean, I think like this is a sad sight to see, but we know as well our greatest concern with Mosaic is the logging that goes on in our watershed. And we've had them at council meetings and asked some very difficult questions about that logging. We've also worked with their staff very closely over the last few years on our watershed management plans and working toward that as well as concerns when they do come up. So they have been responsive for sure, but being responsive is one thing and seeing shifts in behavior is another. So did you want to make a motion?
All right, Madam Mayor, I'll move that council invites Mosaic to come before council and tell us and explain their future plans, especially with the site, the graveyard site area. And what about Fuel for Fire too? Let's have discussion with Fuel for Fire on that. And
I'll second your motion. Thank you, Councillor Solda. Any other comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to question period, which is an opportunity for the public to ask questions of the committee. For those participating electronically, please use the raise your hand feature and you'll be called on in the order in which your question appears. Question? Yes. If you want to just come on forward and then just turn the microphone on and state your name, please.
Hi, my name's Randy Smith. I'm new to the community. I just wanted to show my face and come see what's happening in town. I lived in Whistler for 25 years and I've lived all over BC. I grew up in Shawnigan Lake and I'd like to do some things in community. One thing is I'd like to start doing some murals. I'm an artist, so I'd like to start a mural festival. And also, I'm a big fan of skateboarding and mountain biking and stuff. So I did put it out to, I think, Miss Solda there. She asked me to come. So I'd like to help in any way I can with the skateboard park and the rest of it as well. I think Port Alberni is a beautiful valley, and it gets a bad rap, but I like it here, and I'd like to see the community grow, and I would like to help in any way possible. And I'm becoming part of the council with the Arts Council, so I'll be in with that. And what else? Yeah, I think that Port Alberni has thought of itself as like a through town forever, I believe, you know, like everybody going to Tofino. And I think it should embrace tourism. It's a beautiful place and lots of opportunity for that kind of stuff, and lots of, if you build it, they will come, kind of thing. I've seen it in Whistler, I've seen it in Kimberley, BC, I've seen it in a lot of places, Squamish, and I know there's a lot more than to just build it, but anyway, you'll see my face more often. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Randy. And I'll just say that we are, or we, with our staff and Community Futures, are trying to work on a project to build a new skate park and an adventure park. So if you haven't gotten involved in that yet, that's probably... Okay, wonderful. I was going to say that's probably somewhere they would very much value your insight. So I'm glad to hear, and look forward to seeing you more at council meetings. Thanks. Other members of the public? Joseph?
Hi, my name's Joseph, and I'm a resident of Port Alberni. Just a couple things I want to kind of bring up. There was a comment or a question. I'm going to try and frame it as a question if I can. Regarding the blueprint for strategies on the drug problem in Port Alberni and all over BC, it was mentioned, I think it was 37 unfortunate deaths here in Port Alberni in 2023, I think is what I heard, and I think that's what I read in there. That's only part of it. I worked in 2 different facilities that the result of drugs, sometime from drug use or a one-time use, apparently can happen just for a one-off thing, because it does mention in here also in her report, or reading through some of that, that all drugs that are unregulated have toxic stuff in them. And she says, I think it says in there, all of them, not just the ones that, are causing the biggest problems. So, but with that in mind, brain injury is very serious. A shortage of oxygen to the brain can cause impairment, cognitive, but also can lead to very tragic, where there is basically, I worked with an individual who could only move his eyes. That's all he could do. Couldn't move any part of his body. Was fed through a G-tube with a liquid supplement type thing. And every third day would have to have a suppository for a bowel movement. That's the result of shortage of oxygen to the brain. So with that in mind, just those sort of things, and some of the things we're looking at to say, what do we do? There's something that I want to read to you that was in the newspaper, and I want to ask you what your thoughts on this are. January the 19th of 2022, this was in the Alberni News. I'm not going to read the whole thing, I'm just going to read the 2 paragraphs that I think have the most weight to them. Initial stop developed into a drug investigation and search warrant, which results in the seizure of a significant quantity of drugs, including methamphetamine, fentanyl, crack cocaine. Police also found cash and an unregistered loaded firearm next to the driver's seat. So that was a routine traffic stop that turned into that. The end of the article in the paper, the driver was detained but has now been released on conditions, including the condition that they are not allowed on Vancouver Island, pending charge approval by the Crown Council. The driver's identity will not be available for disclosure until charges are approved. I still haven't seen who that, but not that it would matter, probably wouldn't know him or her. But that's a big problem, of course, are toxic drugs coming into the community. And this seems like kind of a, you could say, what's the word? Not a very, it's not a much of a deterrent to keep drugs from coming into the community. And so that my question would be, what do you think of that? Do you think that's an appropriate way to deal with somebody that's bringing drugs into the community? Seems rather like I don't know what eventually happened, but at the moment it seemed like not much of a deterrent to bring things into our community. And say a one-time use can be fatal to somebody who even just tries it. So it's not just somebody who's using drugs on a regular basis. So that would be my question. What do you think that should be included? Because I didn't see much. It does say in the report she gave that there's a number of agencies involved. One of them is police and first responders, but I don't know how the RCMP are able to deal with things. Maybe their hands are slightly tied. Maybe I know they're in some communities they're trying bringing in stronger law enforcement to bring greater deterrence. So that to me is probably a huge one that should be looked at. Anyhow, that's sort of a question, a comment. I do have another question, but I think I'll leave it because that one's way too important to gloss over with something that's more to do with a trail or something. So I'm going to leave those for another date. So I'd appreciate your thoughts on that and whoever's looking into that to say, what do we do to keep them out of our community? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Joseph. And I think that there's probably no one here who thinks ultimately that is okay. And I think it's something that we are aware of on a regular basis, obviously not within our scope of local government, but not without our scope, outside of our scope of advocating. What I will say is on a local level and what we do have control over, we have been without an officer in charge at the RCMP for some time now. And we've had somebody in the acting position, but not a person who's necessarily, in the community dedicated, wanting to be here in that role and developing. They're filling and doing a great job and, keeping the operations going. But we are very excited to finally have a fit interview for moving forward with the next step with a fantastic candidate. So coming up in the next couple of weeks, and if that person does end up being a good fit when that process is complete, then I think that that some of these conversations will be excellent to be having with that person. I think it is so critical that we have the right person in that officer in charge position. And we've had some really great examples in Port Alberni of people who have just done an incredible job. But from our perspective at council, I think it's so important to have somebody that we can connect with on a regular basis, somebody that we can have bigger conversations with about what we can do to advocate if we do see what we perceive to be an injustice or certainly a punishment not fitting of what the crime is. And obviously that's on a very minimal knowledge kind of scale, but yeah, thank you for bringing it forward. Any other comments? Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With drawing on a little bit of experience in the area, I am going to say the answer is far more intricate than even the question was. So I won't take that long. But I, again, welcome anyone who is interested to hear my views on the topic because they are mine and not necessarily shared by the entire population of Canada. I'm happy to share them. With regards to the question asked, it's really two questions. One is the set of circumstances outlined, is that a deterrent? And I think the answer to that is no, it's not. It's simply criminal activity is very hard to deter with criminal sanctions. So longer discussion. Is it appropriate? We're told by the Supreme Court of Canada that it is. We have a Charter of Rights. That Charter of Rights has been adjudicated on by legal minds, the courts, which is the third arm of government, and that's what they say. So there it is. It's whether it changes in the future is up to other levels of government, but whether or not it's right, that is what the charter says. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patola. I'm going to go to online. I see Ryan Hart with his hand up. Ryan, our staff will unmute you, and then you just have to unmute yourself as well. So whenever you're ready. Ryan, can you hear us? No, it's not only you, Charlene. Okay, we will see if, are there any other members of the public in the room? I'll go to Charlene, and then Ryan, if you're able to hear us, we will come back to you next for question.
Okay. I was just looking at the vehicles. I know there's a whole bunch of vehicles that is on the agenda for being purchased. And you were mentioning that you were letting the vehicles go at only 60,000 kilometers, which is actually quite still a very new vehicle. And do you usually do that? Is that customary?
No, I don't think that's what Councillor Solda meant. She was talking about purchasing vehicles that were used with maybe 60,000 kilometers, not getting rid of our vehicles at 60,000 kilometers.
Oh, okay, because I was going to say, would it be possible to purchase them?
No,
They were
not
going to
our
auction,
practice.
Also, Mosaic, do you know when they plan to log Lacey Lake? It's a very big concern for me, being in Cherry Creek.
Certainly not aware of that, and outside of city limits, so they wouldn't necessarily consult with us on that. But when we do have our meeting with Mosaic here, as a Cherry Creek resident, you certainly are still able to come and participate in that and ask questions when the time comes. And as well, I would encourage you to speak to your regional district electoral area representative.
Okay, now your Growing Communities Fund, is that that's a grant? Is that a federal, provincial, or UN grant?
It's a provincial grant.
Provincial. Most all your grants are provincial grants, aren't they?
The vast majority of the grants do come from the province. We do get every single year, what is the gas tax called now?
Carbon?
No. It used to be called the gas tax, and now it is. It has a better name for communities to be more representative of what it is. Community, yeah, whatever it is. We do get an ongoing federal grant from the federal government as well. But the vast majority of our project-specific grants or large amounts of money do come from the province.
Okay, my last question, and I don't really want to bring this up too much, but it just has kind of came out quite, on the budget here and on the corporate, the chief administrator officer, whose salary is at $235,000, is scheduled to have a 44.24% increase, giving him $338,984. And I was wondering, that's only $18,816 less than the Prime Minister. And I was just wondering why he would get such a large increase.
Thank you, Charlene. So neither of those numbers are correct. First of all, that's not his salary, our CAO's salary. That is salary plus benefits plus loaded cost, and there could be more specifics to that. And I believe there is an additional position in there, which is representative of the increase. So that is not an increase in salary. That's an additional person. Andrew, do you want to add any more?
So that you're hiring another person.
Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair, that's for the office of the chief administrative. So it's everything in my office to help support council. So the position actually is for administration to support council and myself. So that would be booking meetings, dealing with briefing notes, a whole bunch of those types of items. But it is for that budget line item is for the chief administrative's office. It's not just one wage line.
Yeah, and it's not a salary number. That's a department budget.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ryan Hart. Gonna try one more time on there, although I do see his hand is down now online. But Ryan, if you did have a question, you're welcome to go now. Nothing from Ryan. We'll move on. Joseph? Yeah.
Just to follow up to my earlier question and comment, I'm just curious, and I don't know what the school's doing to make parents and students aware of the potential for a harm caused by even a one-time use. I don't know if they show videos or something. I know in school they did it for sex education, different things. You would have all kinds of stuff, right? And I don't know if it's out there in the school boards. If anybody knows, you can answer that for me. But to make parents and students aware that one use of a toxic drug could either do what every parent would fear the most. But to have a child that's now permanently disabled also, seeing videos like that and making it out there, hopefully would be a bit of deterrent even trying it. I know when I was aware of something almost scare I don't want to say the pants off me, but that's the only thing I can think of is, put a good scare into me, go, wow, I'm not going to go there, thinking that I'll be the one that gets away scot-free. So I don't know if that's something that could be brought up to schools. Are you bringing this into the schools, and are you making parents and students aware of just the great potential that's there? And a lot of parents maybe already are doing that themselves, but students perhaps not, and they're the most vulnerable, of course, and that's our children. So if anybody knows or anybody can recommend to the school that be part of their, thank you.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Councillor Haggard.
Ron Merck does do talks. He was the co-chair of the community action team, and he's done a couple of talks to Catalyst because the majority of the people who die of toxic drug overdoses are males between the ages of 20 and 59. So he's been targeting that. But I also have just suggested to him that he do a talk at the high school as well. And I know they've hired a mental health and wellness counselor this year. I believe, I'm not sure what their exact title is, but part of that is about drugs. So I'll suggest to Ron just to make sure that he has reached out to the high school, because I agree 100%.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? Lisa.
Lisa Hagan. You were talking about the stipulations for the Growing Communities Fund, you were talking about the Growing Communities Fund, and it was from the provincial. What are the stipulations that you have to follow to receive those funds? Like, you have to do certain things, like you're not allowed to do this, or you're not allowed to do this, or we prefer you to do this, like follow climate or stuff like that. I just wonder what.
The full policy information can be found on the provincial government's website because it does have a full breakdown that's publicly available of what funds can be used for and what they can't. We didn't have to do anything to get the funds. A year or so ago during the provincial budget surplus, one of the initiatives that they took on was giving funds to municipality for a variety of different types of infrastructure. So it went out on a scale based on population and based on community growth and a few other things to indicate how much each community would receive. And it was automatic.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Also, I just wonder if there's any future housing for seniors coming. I know that there was one that was just done by the old ADSS, which is very expensive. I know that it's $3,500 a month to go there. That is not in usually a senior's budget, especially nowadays, like you can't afford that. Just wondering if there's anything like that becoming available for, I heard that there was for middle class, somebody had put that out online, and your minimum of your wage that you had to make was $83,000 a year. That really doesn't fit a lot of seniors these days, I don't think. There's some, but I don't think there's a lot. So just wondering what, if anything is going to happen for that, because I do believe there's a lot of lower, and I do believe that a lot of homeless are starting to come from seniors, and it's very concerning for me. So I just want to wonder if there's anything.
So 55 units, I think, were just completed at Rainbow Gardens. That is seniors housing, and that is, all different types of affordable housing, but it is designated affordable housing. That is seniors just housing, not care. The one that you're referencing on the old high school site is care. So that is a cost, and I believe their lowest single individual price is $1,800 a month, because they do have some that are subsidized. That's 104 units, and they're at a variety of different levels. But that is a care cost with all-inclusive meals as well. These are not projects that council leads, but we do support some of them. Some of them we support with donation of land. Some of them we support with reduction of development cost charges or other initiatives that we have. They're not our projects, so we don't determine who gets to live in them or what income levels need to be. They're typically set out by the provincial government and the programs that they have in place to incentivize certain builders. The one that you're referencing, for $85,000 a year incomes, that's the BC Building Fund that was just put out, which is intended to fill a gap that is starting to exist with middle-income working families. So there has been a lot of initiatives in affordable housing over the last few years. Certainly in our community, we've had hundreds of units approved and several under construction, a lot of them completed, but they have all targeted people who are lower income, and so the provincial government now is looking to target people who are middle income as a part of the housing spectrum as well.
Do you feel like Port Alberni has a lot of middle income and higher, because as there's not a lot of high paying jobs here, do you feel like that is an important thing for Port Alberni? I don't know, just wondering on numbers of households if there's a need for that.
I think all housing, and I shouldn't say I think, I should say I know as a result of our housing needs assessment that we need housing across all types and of the spectrum. So anecdotally, I could tell you, a teacher that I know of who is having a really hard time finding somewhere for her and her children to live, and that cost is certainly a factor. But our housing needs assessment demonstrates a need for housing across all spectrums.
Okay, thanks. Another question.
Lisa, can I just add something?
Oh, sure.
For that BC Builds program, 80% of it will be at market rates. So they're not getting free housing. They're not getting subsidized housing. They will pay market rates for rentals.
yeah, I know that.
And 20% of it is below market rate.
Yeah, I knew that. I just was wondering about, because we are in such a need for seniors and low income, I feel more than anything. I'm just wondering about the need since we don't have a lot of high paying jobs here. I mean, we do in the hospital and we do in some of the SAN group or whatever, but we've lost a lot of that. So I'm just asking that question. Another question is, which has been floating around. Is there a projected price for the pool?
The pool process is being led by the regional district. So the city is engaged in the process. Councillor Haggard is our representative on that committee, but the work is not yet complete. I believe the report with what the community selected through or the options that they selected through the surveys that were done, I believe that's coming to the next regional district meeting. So at that point, there will be more information available, but the pool will need a referendum in order to continue, and there's going to be a lot of work that will get to that because there's significant borrowing required. A referendum will have to be done.
Yes, I heard there was like 65 million, and I'm like, what? Was that a number that was put out, 65 million?
So if you did the survey that was online, as you added different features to the pool, it let you price your own pool basically. As you added different features, it would give you a total potential cost. That was without any grant funds, without any sponsorship, without any kind of offset. So it was kind of a worst case scenario number, but I think the top level option did add up to around $60 million. I don't remember specifically, and we haven't had that report yet.
Okay, I just wanted to check that because I couldn't find that online, and I wanted to clarify with you because there's going back and forth. I was like, no, somebody said 65 million. No, somebody didn't. So I wanted to make sure. I wanted to also thank Cindy for bringing the topic up of Mosaic. I think there is a lot of things that actually need to be talked about with them, and it's too bad. I wish that you could have a town hall, because I think there's a lot of issues and a lot of questions that could be asked. I don't know if that's an option, but I appreciate that you brought that up. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Other questions from members of the public? Roland?
Don't worry, it's not that many questions. I was preparing a few notes while I was watching. Just to touch on the treatments facilities, and Councillor Douglas spoke to it, and there was a bit of discussion. As a father of a daughter who is struggling, I'm just wondering, with all the conversations that you may have, Madam Chair or Councillor Douglas, and one of the things that I've learned on this multi-year journey with my daughter is that I know there's a narrative publicly, all-inclusive, and no matter what facility we're doing, everybody should be in one sort of area, whatever it is. But in treatment, I don't believe that's true. My daughter has failed spectacularly. I know families with sons or brothers or whatever, males, who have failed spectacularly, partly because they're in co-ed, or large degree because they're in co-ed facilities. And I know for a lot of families, their loved ones, a big issue is that led to their addiction is trauma in relationships with the opposite sex. So putting them in a campus and expecting them to work on that aspect while they're seeing triggers, even if they're strangers, is a model that's also not working. So I'm curious that in all the conversations that are being had, if there's any discussion that, absolutely I agree there's a need for more facilities, but more gender-specific facilities, female only, male only. And I appreciate a lot of the stats that with the drug overdoses and the abuses, generally males, as you know the stats, less so with females, but the problem is it's been really difficult for us to get my daughter into a female-centric facility. So if we're pursuing that as a council, as a community, is that any part of the discussion at all? I'm just curious.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's really good context, and I think outside of our scope for what makes the most sense. Though I personally would tend to agree with you from my own family's experience. That said, what we are targeting specifically right now is a bit of an opportunity to bring not long-term recovery, but rather community stabilization beds, which are effectively community detox beds. So that would be the step between using and going to treatment. As you know, a lot of treatment facilities require you to be medically detoxed first, and that is a barrier for a lot of people getting into treatment. That's been identified for a number of years as a real gap in the Alberni Valley. So we are pursuing with Island Health and actually jointly with the province and federal government, as well as the Shot-and-Hoopichesset, the creation of community stabilization beds in the community. There's a model that was just implemented in Campbell River that we are looking to follow. We have not looked to specifically say that be for one gender specifically or anything like that. But I think that is valuable insight that we could certainly bring to those conversations. And yeah, we hadn't considered that in the discussion specifically, and I would say probably Island Health will make that determination on their own of what they can fund, but we can certainly bring that up as community feedback.
Sure, and I think that was the impetus for my comments, is that I'm not party to the conversations, but if you can plant the seed, I realize this is not a City of Port Alberni obligation. Honestly, it's a provincial and possibly federal mandate for health. But because you're participating in the discussions, or whoever it is that's on behalf of the city, if they would kind of nudge the people that this might be something that we need to consider as we're building these programs out. So, okay. Circling back to the planning that we're doing, Mr. Arsenault, who was here earlier, am I correct in that he touched on also on the CSOs and the and as part of this building this plan? So, and which I thought I heard that correctly, but things are going on. I'm trying to pay attention in real time. In July of 2020. Associate Engineering produced a 345-page report on our sewer system as a build-on of their 2001 195-page report, long-term plan to address. It's all mapped out for years and years. The Econics report came out in 2015 as a corollary that set the sewer rates for the continued cost of sustainable ownership, and thereby the sewer rates have been set and based upon those reports. So my question is, obviously we've paid for these consultants. We've got reports on the shelf. The infrastructure has been identified. The pipes haven't magically jumped out of one street and gone to another. Why are we waiting for another report instead of just going through your earlier comments, Madam Chair, that you want to take more money out of the community, building communities fund and pour it into infrastructure. Is this a piece we really need to wait for and produce another report on this, on the CSOs? I'm just wondering in light of these other.
Thank you. I would say for sure we're not waiting. We are pursuing CSO work this year, and there is work in our budget for CSOs this year. Mike, maybe you could speak to some of the additionals that we'll get out of that portion of the master planning, though, just for context.
Sure. Thanks for the question. I'll try and answer it to the best of my ability. But all those reports will go into the planning process. The master plans won't look just at the singularity in the road or infrastructures in the road. It'll look at multiple. So where is the best sort of bang for the buck with water, sewer, road, streetscape, etc. In the treatment of an area, and hopefully lay out that 5 and 10-year capital plan for us as well. There are new standards that we can also implement to try and mitigate some of that, but in no way are we reproducing those same reports.
Okay, so, which is fine, but I guess where I'm going at, through you, Madam Chair, is what are we really expecting to learn new that hasn't already been identified in those reports? In the context of the city has not grown very much. My understanding, if I'm correct, that the new subdivision, say in Upper Bird Street, the developer is responsible for putting that underground infrastructure, and it plugs into the existing city system. So the city has no obligation to go up there and do those because they're brand new. So that's the disconnect in my mind. What are we expecting to gain by spending more time to get, and part two of that would be, I believe that there's, in the bargaining unit, there's a lot of really knowledgeable people with a lot of real world experience and knowledge that they've built up over the years of working for the city. Are they going to be part of the process? Because I know from operating my own company, the people that we put through, some of the best employees are the ones with strong local knowledge. And we're asking people from outside of the community to come in and sort of guide us, when I think you've got a lot of employees that work for this organization, that if you just sat down and had a coffee with them, they could actually help inform the decision. Is that a consideration?
Through the chair, we try to involve our employees in all of the conversations, and also encourage them outside of work to participate in any of the public houses as well. But we do engage our employees on the structure, especially where they're hands-on. Again, since I've been in BC now quite a while, and the standards have changed over time, and the different treatments on different areas. So meanwhile, the water and sewer systems haven't changed very much going back to the Roman times, as you probably understand that. So you are correct that it's not always, a lot of our infrastructure is overdue in the city of Port Alberni, and those reports really highlight it. So it's about organizing ourselves so we can take an approach that treats all infrastructure without sort of breaking the bank, coming up with that process. Some of those reports have to be updated in just the numerical, like the cost implications, but also it does come down to the streetscape, and also new guidelines around stormwater, etc. as we move through that. So I know that there is planned changes coming for stormwater. I don't know when they'll become law, but it'll have new regulations around how we discharge all of our drainage off streets. Do we do pre-treatment, or do you do it afterwards? Those are some of the conversations. Do you use bioswales? Do you put it back into the ground to help the aquifers instead of running it straight into the bay? And then on the sewer infrastructure, it gets complicated as well. So there's no real easy, quick discussion or answer to your, but we are taking all the information that we've gathered to this point, and the consultants will have that to review. I'm guessing the sewer or the combined sewer storm will be more of a look at where are we getting rid of the storm, how are we doing the water, and then updating the numbers for the sewer. More so than the the same type of study on the CSOs. I hope that helps. It is a very complex area, and that's why when Mr. Arsenault was talking, he said we're going to be doing the water, sewer, and storm at the same time, the procurement, to try and get the same consultant to look at all of them. And the reason why that is to make sure that we're dealing with each one in a systematic way. As you know, sewer and water are funded separately from the general fund, and storm is, so it's about coming up with that comprehensive 5 to 10 year capital plan so we can actually see a difference, so we aren't here in 4 or 5 years with not making much progress on it. So we can lay that roadmap out and give council the option to make an informed decision with all the information.
Okay.
So just for a little bit of clarification on what was just said, because I think you make a great point that there are, like, our sewer and water systems are systems that we may not have a full master plan in place, but we have more done than some of our other than roads, or some other areas of our infrastructure where we are just going based on what we see at the time or where the complaints have come in, or but we don't have an actual formal plan in place. So I'm assuming that the plans that have been done in the past are going to be used in the master planning. Yes, and including the 2020 plan, which was done as a part of our wastewater project. And then additional to that, really, so the bulk of the master planning for that service may be more focused on roads, streetscapes, whatever, and then moving, like, figuring out how to combine those, bring them all into one plan.
Correct, and then taking the growth strategies out of the OCP for the areas to make sure if we are upgrading a sewer main, let's say along the feeders that go into the sewer plants, that we're upgrading those to maximize it so we aren't digging them up as the city grows. So we're thinking out that 20 to 50 years and saying, what are the sizes, what is the densification in different parts of the town? So there is going to be some forecasting, but we will be using the old information. Of course, you need to do a master plan, you have to understand where you've been before you can do the future forecasting. So on the CSO, yes, definitely. But also we are short of a lot of storm because of the combined. So they'll be doing it all at once, though. Yeah.
Any follow-up question?
Sure, yeah. So you did touch on organization. So will this planning in other words, we won't just end up with another report that tells us all kinds of things. How are we going to be organized at the end when we receive the data? How do we implement it? And will it inform the necessary funding at the pace that's necessary to keep up? Because in my notes here, and from 2017, on the asset management general infrastructure replacement reserve, it was sorry, get the right side here, that it was a top priority for the new engineer at the time to develop this plan and start addressing it and funding it. 7 years later, we're hiring a consultant and getting a plan. So forgive me for having a little bit of skepticism, but we've been waiting for plans, and sort of kicking this stuff down the road with respect to getting the work done. I think we've already identified in the past quite a bit of the work that should have been done then, and I appreciate regulations and so on change. But when we get the report, are we really going to act on it, and will council provide the funding, which is a council decision, not yours? Yeah.
Yeah, so through the chair, very good questions. I'm hoping we're going to work through it all. And yes, I'm hoping that we're going to be able to bring some realistic, through the process, bring some realistic funding goals to council. I've been, from Nova Scotia to here, I've been involved in infrastructure, and it does come down to an amount of risk, because there are a lot of our pipes in our ground in Port Alberni that would probably be well over their engineered life. But maybe they don't have the same break history. So when we decide about when we're replacing it, that's where that operator knowledge and gathering that information also falls into that, right? So, and that's for each type of infrastructure, especially for deep infrastructure, as we replace the systems under the ground. So it is very complex. As far as, can I guarantee action? No, I can't. I've been involved in lots of processes where action is taken, and I can say over the last few years on CSOs, there has been a lot of action taken and a lot of replacement and a lot of good work in there that has diverted a lot of sewer and storm to the separate areas. So there has been some good work that's happened. This is just to try and move it forward so then the community and council can see for the next 5-10 years some comprehensive strategy. And the reason why we're doing all the master plans, some areas we've never had a plan. So now with understanding that, you can take a breath across all services and you can see that capital plan being made. Sometimes there's hard decisions made on what road gets paved or doesn't get paved because of a general fund issue, not the water or sewer issue. So now we can take a comprehensive look at that and try and make the system where a lot of our infrastructure is old. And we aren't the only one in that area across BC. Pretty much everywhere I go and talk to people, they're in the same boat, and it's about that risk factor and where does funding it, come up with that sweet spot where you're funding enough, where you aren't dealing with the failures and the repair work, but you're keeping ahead with your replacement. So
yeah,
I could go on and on.
Yeah,
and have
no,
a long
and I appreciate it,
conversation.
and I do fully understand that it's I pay attention to this stuff a lot more closely than a lot of people. I know that you're all aware of that, but but with the funding piece, it was a year ago that Councillor Haggard had mentioned at last year's budget, and I said when I was here at the last meeting that you should have done 10% or so last year. And that as she had commented that we have to be bolder, that we have to, the council, we in this case meaning the council, think beyond the next election and not allow so much stuff to be passed on to the future constituents or our kids who are growing up here with respect to crumbling roads and infrastructure. That takes more funding. I'm glad so far tonight, although there wasn't a whole lot of budget discussion tonight, that you weren't sort of trying to throw 100,000 here and 100,000 there. None of us probably like, a lot of people don't like the tax increases proposed, but you as a group, as a council, unfortunately, you go through the list of tax increases, 1.3, 2.5, 2.6, 1.5, 3, 3, 1.9 for years. And as was discussed here last year, you weren't keeping up with inflation. And so two things happened. The assets that we were supposed to be addressing 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago are now a decade older. But on the other side, inflation has driven them up. So you've opened up this big gap, and we're going to need to fund it. It's not going to be palatable, but you're going to need to stick to your guns, and we're going to need to. So that's where with these plans, it's all fine to get a plan to tell us, but is there going to be a commitment? I guess I have to wait and see.
Will council fund it? Thank you for the question, Roland. I will say, just a final comment, actually, Councillor Mealy might want to say something as well, but I will just say that one of the areas in like the almost a decade that I've been on council, that I have seen council stick to a plan has been as a result of the Econics water and sewer review, and that was not a full review. It was not a full asset management plan by any means, but it was a start.
Yeah.
And it recommended increases to sewer and water fees based on a general understanding of what the asset replacement cost was going to be. And in every single year since 2015, with the exception of, I think, 2020 for COVID, we did hold the rates rather than increase at the recommended rates. I think we did that. Every single year otherwise, we have increased the rates at the rate we needed to so that those funds would be sustainable. And so I think my personal feeling is if a plan is put in front of council that is informed, that helps us understand very clearly the breakdown of our infrastructure and the pace at which it needs to be replaced, with recommended projects and budget numbers in place, I think councils, either this one or future ones, will have a very hard time not funding that. And I think that the Econics Fund review study and the budget increases that came as a result of that for that specific purpose are a good indicator of that.
Yeah, those I understand are working quite well, but you've got capital costs that far exceed that funding model in the sewer rate fee. So that's really where I was going with it. I have no objection to anything you said there. I understand that program is working the way it was designed to work, more or less. But you've got funding requirements far beyond that that we're not going to be able to just rely them on sewer and water fees. But, okay,
sure.
that's all for today. Thanks
Thank
for your
you.
time.
Councillor Mealy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Smith, for coming and these questions. Something that just tweaked my mind, and just a comment is we will be including workers and our staff with all this. What I'd like to also see is for us to extend that to the retired city workers that have been part of this, maybe the ones that have retired in our community, to give us maybe some historical information as well that the current workforce can't give us. So just a thought.
Through the chair, there will be public engagement through the master plans, and we would encourage all the public to come out and comment. There's people that come from all over the place and have lots of experience doing the work and being involved in these types of processes. So we would call on all the public to come out and participate in the sessions.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from members of the public? Okay, would somebody like to move adjournment? Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Patola. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed.